Konnichiwa, the hill is always greener yokoso. Kono bangumi wa yone no yujin tachi ga Sonic the Hedgehog ni sute kaitarie nagara. Sakurenai, jiken no nagare to wakamoto to no kyokan no yoku ga kyosoku ni otoru taikyo. Kimochi o magarawasu, yotori toshita, jikan no nagare wa jiwa bangumi desu. CyberLink toshomyasu.
Watashi wa Jeremy, donde está biblioteca?
Faulerro Roche, Grand no sponsor, Dekure no Kushimasu.
RockTheJake desu. Tore wa doko desu ka? Something I actually said in my Japan trip. Not the RockTheJake part, but...
Sorry, guys. I think I had the language setting set wrong.
Oh, I hate when that happens.
Should be good. Should be good for the rest of the episode.
That's what happens when you insert a cartridge into a Japanese Switch.
I know, we forget to tell our audience that we have dual audio on this podcast. You just have to...
One of the benefits to the podcast being region-free.
Chotemate, give me a second. Hey guys, it's me. I'm on the English setting now. What is this play? Anyway.
Oh no.
I am voiced by... See, I have 2 dubs. I'm voiced by Scott McNeil and Chris Sabat.
You really can't lose there, actually. That's great. Imagining that is always great.
I know. I don't know how I worked that out.
Get milk.
I knew you'd sacrifice yourself for President Lincoln.
One of these days.
I'm voiced by Duke Nukem and Nuke Dukem.
No.
Froggy. Or Froggy Days.
Kyle-kun.
Hey, wait a minute. John St. John. Is that actually pronounced John St. John? Like Jeffrey St. John?
Not according to him.
Okay, I was about to say, I'm sure he's clarified that before.
Okay.
Who the fuck is Ken Penders?
Hi, welcome to the Sonic Podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. If you couldn't pick up from that title, and honestly, I don't know how you would, we are doing something a little unconventional for this episode. We are doing a deep dive on some of the differences between Japanese Sonic and Western Sonic.
A potentially hot button issue depending on what areas of the internet you still hang out in.
Yeah, it will be an especially interesting and potentially, angering topic for you if you're one of those annoying people we always talk about.
And this topic was spearheaded by Faulerro, because Faulerro has those deep, intimate thoughts about the differences between Sonic in the West and in the East. And I'll just go ahead and say that I'm interested in learning a lot today. I don't know how much I'll contribute, but I will do my best, and I'll be here to learn along with the rest of the audience.
Yeah, Jake, you fulfill a very important role on this episode in particular. You get to be the person who sits there and goes, "Oh, I didn't know that." For the most of it, it's going to be fun.
We have to have a little counter of how many times I say it.
Well, you are our designated normal person of the podcast, so we need you here to just remind us not to get too lost in the weeds. And as we know, back in Sonic 1, when this happened, you were like, "What? Oh yeah, sorry, you're not that unwell about it. You don't know that." So,
Unwell.
So we'll get into it, but
yeah.
I
will say, like, when the time is right, I'm looking forward to sharing some of my thoughts about the differences I saw between the popularity of Nintendo and the popularity of Sonic specifically in Japan, but we'll get there when we get there.
Definitely.
You could probably guess which one is the most popular, but we'll get to that.
I wonder.
But this was a topic that I decided to throw out there because it's like part 3 of our trilogy of talking about the sort of the westernization and the sort of weird, disparate versions of Sonic that we have to deal with from over the years. First, we dealt with like reading the Sonic Bibles in that one episode. Then we talked about who is Sonic, or at least 3 of us did. Luke wasn't able to really contribute to that, so this time, going to make up for that, I hope. But this is the finale of that, in a way. We're going to basically get into the weird split, the weird 2 elements that make up Sonic. Even though there are many elements that make up Sonic, so much of it can be sort of sourced back to the Japanese side of Sonic and the Western side of Sonic. And when I say Western, I I mean, it's America that started it all, basically. Even the British stuff all started in America.
Yep.
But yeah, on one side is the pure, gentle, and subdued world of Japanese Sonic with its pristine green fields and soft, humble world of joy and simplicity. But on the other, we see the dark, oncoming forces of the dreaded American Sonic, looking to infect and ruin the true Sonic with its sinister, conflicting ideologies, reducing that magical world to a bastardized version of what we all understand it to be, Japanese and better because of it.
A punk attitude inspired by American President Bill Clinton.
That was on the Japanese side, though. That's what's funny about it. Sonic was always supposed to be a little bit American. They were just apparently really inspired by Bill. Well, let's hope not too inspired, because
Oh, don't get me started. I do think we should say up front that we are going to, and this is also not to denigrate all of the wonderful research Faulerro has put in together. I'm speaking more of my own knowledge, that a lot of we're going to try our best, because a lot of this stuff is, I wouldn't say it's not preserved. It's the version that has been preserved that is common knowledge may or may not be entirely truthful. And it would be hard to, because this is talking about a company that's been around, Sega as a company has been around for so long that like a lot of the people that were there when it started aren't still there anymore. And the people that are still there, like, I don't know, are kind of probably for NDA reasons or for lots of reasons, aren't just going to come out and say like, oh yeah, we wanted to do this with Sonic, but the Americans didn't, and we disagreed. So as we're going through this, we're going to try our best. If you know something that, that we don't, feel free to share in the comments. But like, we're not here to argue like whose version of a story about the origin of Sonic is real or not. We're trying to get to the nitty gritty on what makes it.
Ours is the correct version.
Yes, what makes it, especially early Sonic, different between the Japanese side and the American European side. So it's less about trying to find out what CEO or producer was lying, and more like, no, here's just how we see it.
This is what we know objectively, but also this is what we subjectively believe. So there's going to be a bit of that, but don't worry, we will delineate between the two.
Yeah, it's also important to remember that, this whole thing started 35 years ago. So the mind tends to, lose some of those finer details over the years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've brought up like, man, what was considered like fact for a long time, especially in online circles, that Mobius was a mistranslation of an interview with like Yuji Naka, and somebody just made that up. But because it was the early internet, nobody bothered to ask if it was real.
Yeah. And it gets kind of interesting because that kind of brings us to where Sonic started off, because the Japanese Sonic, who, there's so many details of the actual creation of Sonic, who he was to begin with. Mr. Needlemouse, the little rabbit guy, the little mascot competition that they held within Sega of Japan to decide who Sonic was, who the new mascot of Sonic, basically the new Alex Kidd, the replacement, the better Alex Kidd was going to be. And, but the one that supposedly Japan always started off with is, here he is. He's a little cool, confident blue guy who lives on planet Earth and has always been fighting that evil Dr. Eggman, and he's free as the wind. Actually, I don't know if that was there to begin with, but that's kind of, people will insist that's always been there, so whatever.
He's free as the wind, like a jet plane is free as the wind, which is what he transforms into because he's on the back of the jacket. Okay, well.
Hey, that's actually an important part of Sonic's origin story, according to the Japanese side of things, but, well, we've gone over the jet fighter.
That might be
origin.
the funniest bit that I'm like, oh, wait, no, I think this is 100% real. That Sega Japan was like, no, you got to use this backstory.
Sega Japan was like, Sonic isn't actually real, by the way. In our own canon, Sonic doesn't exist. So, and then maybe they could have circumvented a lot of problems by doing that. But who knows? Sonic's always been split, though, even though, like, I suppose not always. There was a plan on the Japanese side And it was, to be honest with you, we don't know for sure what happened because there are conflicting stories out there. There are people out there who are probably lying about what they're being given early concept art of Sonic the Hedgehog and being like, no, that's bad actually. We hate that. Why has he got fangs? Why is he in a band? Why has he got a big booby lady? That's bad. We need to save Sonic, you silly Japanese people. You don't know what you're doing. Let us Americans handle it. We don't know. But, I mean, like, we can't not name names. People like Madeline Schroeder, the mother of Sonic, Tom Kalinske, who was he the president of Sega, of America? Yeah. Al Nilsson. Lots of people have claimed that they saw this early version of Sonic who was a ferocious punk. But America was like, no, actually, this character that you've made to appeal to Americans, he's not American enough, actually. And so there's this interview out there that Al Nilsson claimed that he was the one who was told by Japan, you need to choose which of these mascot characters is going to be our main character. He's like, well, this blue guy, I guess, he's better than this egg dude over here. He's the lesser of two evils.
I assume he might have been talking about like the original, like, Dr. Eggman in pajamas that might have,
the Theodore Roosevelt.
That might have been thrown about as a concept, but like, I just have a hard time believing, yes, Sega Japan was like, all right, we need a new game mascot. Let's send it to Sega America and they'll pick. We just can't seem to choose between what Teddy Roosevelt in pajamas and Sonic the Hedgehog. Please, America Gaijin, show us the light.
It's probably more a case of, okay, if this is going to represent the company as a whole, we should probably get our other divisions in on this as well.
Run it by them at least.
Yeah.
Apparently Tom Kalinske and Al Nilsson were like, I don't like this. Oh, that's bad, actually. Tell you what, take this character, he's a bit too mean and horrible. We can make him look better. We'll get the guy who made the California raisins to fix it. That was apparently one of the things they said they were going to do. Don't worry, we've got this. You got to give him red shoes. That'll solve. Some of them are taking credit for giving Sonic his sneakers, apparently, whatever. We don't know. We can't say for sure because we weren't there, but I've seen early art of Sonic, and he's got his red shoes. Or boots, if you really want to get into it, I suppose.
Well, it's like, I know we've talked about Madeline Schroeder before, like especially on the Sonic Bible episodes. Like, I believe, she did write all of that stuff and came up with some big brained concepts that would go on to shape like those Bibles. And of course, we know shape a lot of the European Sonic parts of the Sonic franchise. But I just don't know how much of, I don't know. It seems like such a weird way to play it that there was like internal conflict between these two countries when they both just wanted to make a character that would sell more games than Mario. I don't know. It's weird.
It does smack of like the kind of unnecessary meddling in something that was already looking pretty good. And apparently when they saw the game footage, they're like, oh shit, no, this is great actually. And was it Al Nilsson? One of them said like, can you make it faster? And Yuji Naka was like, okay, boss. I don't think that happened.
My understanding is that, Madeline Schroeder's sort of rewrites of things was a hot button issue that did not go over well with Sonic Team, but at least apparently, according to another interview, Yuji Naka said that it was probably for the best, the changes they made.
There were some changes there, like certainly in terms of like the Western representation of Sonic. Of course, that early version of the Sonic Bible, the one that we all know in Hardly, Nebraska, where Sonic did live on Earth the whole time, apparently, and he was a little hedgehog who lived in a hedge, who could barely see, and his father died in a festering vat of toxic waste or whatever,
sloughed off by toxic chemicals in front of his eyes.
And he ate fast food and bugs and I don't know.
Hung out with the quilting circle.
Yeah, of course, hung out with the quilting circle, as we all know. All of that wasn't really relevant, but it was kind of the basis for the later versions of the Sonic Bibles that we've discussed also in detail, where they moved it off Earth. Now they were like, no, he's on a magical planet called Mobius, and all the animals from the games have character names now, and and the villain is Robot. Well, I suppose the Robotnik thing and Kinterbor thing. We can't gloss over that. That was a whole thing that they came up with early on and didn't stick to. But elements of that still sort of trickled its way down. Oh, no, I shouldn't talk about trickle-down stuff during the 90s. But a lot of it made its way into Western Sonic. You can't. I suppose we can't ignore that Japan did take on some of these things, I feel like. At least later on. There was definitely some collaboration going on, more so than people think, but also less so than the Console Wars book that talked about this in great detail, probably suggested.
That is where a lot of these anecdotes from that time come from, and I can only state my personal opinion that as someone who was name searched and harassed by the author of that book on Twitter, I don't like that book. Have I read the whole thing? No. But from my interactions with the author, I don't think I'd like it.
You've read the book, though, haven't you, Luke? What do you think of it?
I think that the passage of time and also egos can distort memories a little bit. And that's all I'll say on that.
I mean, you showed us a little bit where they basically took credit for naming Tails. They're like, Miles Prower, who's going to get that? No, he's going to be Tails. But they did supposedly introduce a story of Tails getting bullied, and that carried over into the Japanese manual. We just don't, or maybe it was already there to begin with. We don't know. They could be talking shit, but who knows?
Again, I think that there, with a lot of things in that book, there is, a nugget of truth hidden within all the bullshit. Like, I believe that, Sega, like the Japanese end of Sega wanted to call him Miles Prower, and America suggested, hey, maybe name him Tails, and then they compromised with Miles Tails Prower. But I don't necessarily believe that they wrote this elaborate backstory of Sonic meeting Tails for the first time and teaching him how special he was, and then reading it to the Japanese side, and everybody had been hanging on every word. One developer was even moved to tears. After allowing a moment to let it sink in, Naka walked up to Nilsson and said, "You may call him Tails."
Oh my God.
Judy Tatoya was like, yes, that's it. That's the character I created.
Oh, this character is yours now.
We were fools. What were we thinking? Mint candy? Fuck that shit. He's Miles Monotail, really, but he's actually Tails.
That's what threw me for a loop, was like which, I mean, perfectly fits in like the little stories in the Sonic Bibles. Like, yeah, they would have, oh no, Miles Monotail was a normal fox, except he was, and Sonic had, whatever. No, the nugget of truth that I believe, like you said, is that there was a disagreement on the name and they compromised, and it's Miles Tails Prower. And I think works out great because, Sonic is Sonic because he's fast. Tails, well, he has tails and flies with them. And then you would it started the Sonic trend of like, okay, characters have kind of descriptive names or verb names, I guess, because then you have Knuckles. And, well, I guess Amy Rose has always been the outliner, huh? She just has a government name.
But it feels as though, like, regardless of what's true or not, what we can discern from all this is that, well, actually, we don't know this either. What I got to hear is that Sega America either didn't have or didn't bother with some of the source material story stuff that was going on in the... Because if you read the Japanese manuals of Sonic 1, 2, through, like, and Knuckles, there's a bit more info in them than there is in the Western version, and... It's a bit strange. Like, we never, like, for the first two games, we don't know that these things take place on South Island and West Side Island, respectively. There seems to be, despite them going out of their way to create these elaborate story bibles for Sonic the Hedgehog, when they release the manuals, they're like, so here's Sonic, there's Robotnik, and you beat him, and good luck. but they've got, like, this little narrative going on in the Japanese version of the manual, so it's a bit strange.
Yeah, can I make a weird statement just from thinking about that? Like, comparing the manuals and how a lot of Sonic was marketed over here, and we're going to get to the cartoons and stuff. It seemed to me, and this is just my opinion, this might be uninformed, that like the stories in the manuals for the Japanese games were more concerned with giving you a little world building and seemingly let the characters in the games kind of speak for themselves as far as their attitudes went. And the American side was more like, no, we need to tell kids who these characters are so they'll think they're cool. And maybe that's a bit of like the cultural exchange, like in Japan, a character being like brash and cool and might be considered impolite is like, whoa, that immediately stands out, like, whoa, this dude isn't like, you know, everybody else I know around here. Whereas in America, like, you had so many subcultures of, I don't know. Like I said, I might be talking out of my ass here, but maybe that was a part of it, is like Japan maybe felt like Sonic, the character in the game, you know, tapping his foot, telling you, let's go. Like, that speaks for itself. Mario doesn't do that. Mario's a funny little polite man that you guide along the screen. Whereas America, it's like, oh no, we gotta show this guy. He loves the fast food you like, kids. He knows all the cool lingo. He
plays guitar.
He calls the only a human adult in the game a lame-o and a big fat butthead. Or, does that even make sense?
You're right. That sort of extends into sort of like the external media, like the non-game media, rather than the manuals itself. Like everything else that was going on in like Sonic stuff is all that you described there is, yeah, it's right there. What's interesting is in the Japanese manuals, they do have character profiles. Like Tails has a little character profile explaining all these little things about them. But one character who doesn't really get that is Sonic. And people often like regard these little Japanese manuals as being like, no, you don't understand. The Sonic that we have now, or we had in the good games, the ones that Jason Griffith was playing them and I grew up with. But that Sonic has always been in there in the manuals. It's just America that's got it wrong. And I'm looking at some of the translations of the manuals done by Windy, sort of friend of the show. They don't really give you much of Sonic. Sonic's just kind of this character who sort of jumps up and reacts to what's going on, and I don't know. In the West, Sonic had full-on had a personality. He was a little bit egotistical. I'm not sure what to pull from these little bits of narrative that they give us in the book. We know that Tails likes mint candy and he's a little tinkerer and stuff. I don't know. Maybe I need to like thoroughly inspect the texts of the Japanese version. After all, they're just translated and not as provided. But I don't know. Anyway, I feel like I'm getting off track with that. Sorry.
No, I just think that's interesting because the character profiles I see referred to for the classic characters are the ones that I think, God, were they with the Sonic screensaver? I can't remember, or they might have been like Sonic Jam era. It's the ones that shows.
Yeah, I think those were Jam.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, I think we've talked about those before. That those might have gotten. Might have been one of the ones that still lists Sonic as 16 and Knuckles as 15, but gave like little character blurbs. Like I thought that was where we got some of Knuckles' personality. Anyway, but yeah, those were like Saturn era. Those were not from the classic Mega Drive. As far as saying like people who try and say like, oh, Japanese Sonic has always been consistent, and I just don't know if it's there. I'm not saying that's a bad or a good thing. I just
don't know if there's
think
enough material to really make that judgment. That's the thing. I don't know. We'll get to it when we get to the turn of the century with Sonic the Hedgehog, I suppose.
Uh-huh.
By the way, a quick side note about those little profiles. They are very insistent in the manual of Sonic 3 and Knuckles to mention that Knuckles' nickname is Knuckle.
I feel like there must be something that just doesn't translate.
No, probably not.
Right
it's
there.
very funny to me.
Then why did they spell his name Knuckles without a K in Sonic Drift 2?
Oh, see, there you go. Whoopsie.
Maybe we're pronouncing it wrong. Maybe it's Knuckle.
Maybe it's I think it's funny that I guess that was an Archie thing that Nux with an X has kind of made its way into a few official things. I always thought that was
always
cute.
the shorthand I saw online.
Yep, that was always and I always like it when Knuckles reacts to it a little weirdly because of course Sonic would be that guy. Oh, you have a nickname now. Hey, he did it for Tails, and Tails liked it. Why wouldn't he do it for Knuckles, his new friend?
I think the real question is, though, who gave Knuckles that nickname? Like, I mean, Knuckle.
Locke.
Like, yeah. Oh no, we can't. And even in canon, he wouldn't have given his son a nickname. He's an asshole.
This is child number 1.
Oh, the one I microwaved. Okay.
I'm gonna microwave this baby.
He actually wanted to name him Nucles because he put him in the microwave, but he misspelled it.
So, another note, by the way, I checked this out. Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles, Japanese manuals, the floating island, not Angel Island. I think it was just there in the game, just not in the actual text. So,
Yep. Or Angel Island may have been originally, I mean, like a lot of the Western spin-off media used, Angel Island was a zone and the floating island was the whole thing.
yeah.
Yep.
I just think that this isn't a case of America getting it wrong. It was right there, so whatever.
I mean, if you want another like silly example of just how things on the Japanese side can change, look at the Chaos Emeralds. The number of them, the colors, the way they look, like none of that was standardized until Sonic Adventure. And that was not, I would assume with some confidence, was not a weird rogue American thing. Like they snuck in and reprogrammed, like, that's not what emeralds look like. They gotta be flat. I'm American.
Actually, you know what?
New Hampshire.
I do wonder if, like, which came first, actually. The Sonic Bible mentioning there being a 7th Grey Emerald or Sonic 2, because that happened pretty early on in Sonic's creation, so which came first?
To take that further, like the concept of the Master Emerald being a controller, like does that predate, like...
Yeah, which the Bible obviously predated the Master Emerald.
Because the Master Emerald in Sonic 3 and Knuckles is obviously like a special thing. But again, I don't feel like it was until Sonic Adventure that we got, oh no, this is literally the Emerald in charge, the master of the rest of these emeralds. I don't know. That's just what I'm saying in this discussion. Like, I think the truth lies far more subtly in between of like, well, maybe they were just picking and choosing and borrowing things from each other until
you know what happened. Yuji Naka was reading that original 13-page document. It's like, wait a minute, right here, Sonic should help out the courting circle. That's going in the next game. Some of these things would carry over into the future, but there are some things that are just Western only in Sonic at this early stage, like things like Mobius, things like Robotnik, things about like the Badnik, all those like particular. It's kind of unsure which came first, Eggman or Robotnik. You'd assume it was Eggman. We always assume the Japanese stuff came first, but I've heard conflicting stories about that. Like I heard that someone in Sega America said, "Oh, we don't know what he was called, so we came up with our own name for him. He wasn't named yet. He was just the weird egg guy."
I don't know. I've always talked about that in STC to where they obviously went with Robotnik and did a evolution from a more game-looking Robotnik to an Adventures of Sonic Robotnik, but man, kept a lot of the egg association.
Yeah, it's
and
still
so.
there.
It's still so weird.
I really wonder. I wonder if, again, if there is a scenario where the Eggman name, like Sega of America didn't know about the Eggman name until after, would they have just kept it because they would go, oh yeah, that's funny. He's big and round like an egg. Dr. Eggman, that's a funny name. That'd be great for, again, like, instead of Sonic just going with Robotnik, like, would they have gone with like, oh yeah, Eggman, like way back when? I don't know.
They were like, oh yeah, I am the walrus, I am the Eggman, like in the Beatles. But I remember that. I grew up in that. I don't know. That said, personally, I feel like, on one hand, I'm like, so many of these terms and phrases like Robotnik, the Badniks, Mobius, all these like unique things to the Western side are a nice little source. I feel like they add a little something to Sonic. I personally, I've always liked the Robotnik name a little bit more. Eggman's fine, Eggman's funny, but Robotnik, it sounds like a name that a person might have. But whatever.
Robotnik definitely works in like the movies because.
Oh yeah, because he's a real human.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that before. Is that, well, the man's full full name is something Eggman Robotnik. Like, that is his family name. I think that's the ultimate example of just not just crossing the streams, but meshing these ideas and continuities together. And Badniks is definitely my favorite. I never even considered it like, oh, Badniks like Robotnik. Badnik is just a great name for bad robots.
And then, by golly, sure prefer it to Eggman's robots.
Yeah, Eggman's robots or Eggman's mecha. Like, I think that gets used a lot. I mean, mecha's a cool word, but it just has different connotations in English. You say mecha, and Americans think giant robots, and not just robots in general.
Or Islam.
Oh, yes. Just why Sonic is continually on his journey.
But the whole thing of Mobius is something I like. I liked when Sonic was on another planet, but them doing that fucked things up in the long run.
Yes.
So it's kind of a weird thing, but I guess we'll get to that.
The weirder thing is that Sega themselves, like Sega of Japan themselves, were back and forth on that as well, as we'll get to.
Yeah, they certainly were.
Like they didn't need America to fuck that up.
Oh no! Yeah. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else. Sega of Japan can fuck things up plenty fine on their own, and will continue to do so without the interference of America. So don't you worry. Beyond the games, there was the media adaptations, and I think some of the earliest ones were what was going on in Japan. Like they were trying to sort of show their side of the Sonic story, and this stuff was stuff we didn't know about at all because, hey, it was for the Japanese audience. So we had stuff like the Sonic the Story comic, which is, I don't know, we've talked about it a few times in this, but it's basically a sort of semi-adaptation of the game where it more or less gives you a story based on what was going on in the manual at the time about South Island, about Eggman is a guy that Sonic's dealt with before, and he comes in and he starts like making robots and stuff, and it's pretty cool, but it's the kind of thing that I'm sure that if Sega of America saw, they would be very upset with, because there's Sonic, he's got his band, he's got his fangs, he's got hot titty women in the crowd. It's just for the first chapter of that. The rest of it is all just pure Sonic stuff, and it's perfectly fine and cute. I like it. It's actually more or less a running the zone sort of thing. It's like a little STC of like, hey, here's all the bits from the game. Give it a read sometime. It's pretty cool. I kind of wish we had that over here, but we didn't. It's whatever. And of course, there's the Koro comics, or whatever they're called. The Sonic Nicky the Hedgehog story that we've discussed briefly on this podcast before, which is more or less a little Shazam thing. And it's fine. That has way less to do with what's going on in the Japanese manuals. In fact, it's got nothing to do with it. It's set in Hedgehog Town. Sonic's a nerd, and he can occasionally turn into the cool guy Sonic.
Yeah, I think I have not read all of those. I don't think they've all been translated. Maybe they have, and I just haven't.
Nope.
Aren't they stick out for introducing the concept of a... This is a weird thing to say. The concept of a female hedgehog who hangs around Sonic, and also Charmy? Doesn't Charmy show up in one of those?
So a few of these characters are, I believe, were made ahead of the comic. As I understand it, Amy Rose was sort of like a character that, like, they were told, okay, you need to make a character that can appeal to the girl demographic, so make a female Sonic, essentially. So they had this character in the chamber, but they didn't use it right away. And of course, if you read the first chapter, they hadn't got the design down because she looks like this weird strangled rat character with a giant ponytail.
Yeah. And I can't remember, is she Nicky's sister in that comic too?
No, she's his girlfriend.
No girlfriend.
Oh, okay. So yes, literally an Amy Rose prototype. Okay.
But Sonic does have, Nicky does have a family of hedgehogs, like in the Sonic Bible, but his dad hasn't horribly died in in the toxic vat or whatever.
Oh, man.
I think he's actually a fighter pilot, so...
A rare case of Japan censoring America's hardcore children's story.
Right? Well, they do like their soft and gentle storytelling, so his father did not die in a horrible accident involving toxic waste.
Man, that is I know you're joking, but that is a argument from the modern Japanese Sonic purist that really gets my goat, because I'm like, boy, you don't realize what you're saying.
But it's fun. It's a fun little power fantasy story. It's a bit Captain Marvel-y, or Shazam, if you want to be specific. Whatever. It's fine. I don't know if there are any super fans of that manga out there, but if you're one of the people who swears by that early version of Sonic, then legitimately let us know, because, hey, if that's your idea of Sonic, that's valid. It's kind of cute.
I've seen some Nicky the Hedgehog fan art pop up recently, and I'm just like, that's wild, man. But also to me, that is just as weird and different as anything in the Sonic Bible or anything in Sat AM or Adventures of Sonic. And yet I feel like people are just perfectly fine accepting it for what it is and not trying to say, oh, look what they changed. This is not my Sonic. Blah, blah, blah.
I think the difference is that Sat AM and its universe just kept going through the comics.
Yeah.
So it was kind of harder to, kind of sequester that off for people.
Whereas Korokoro in the manga and everything is just like, that's gone. It lasted a little while. It was there to promote Sonic, and I don't know how successful it was because, well, Sonic in Japan is kind of a complicated history.
Yeah, we're not saying Sonic does not have his his version of popularity in Japan, but I think it's always the thing you can say is Sonic has always been more popular in Europe and America.
I mean, just look at the sales. I mean, I don't want to judge everything based on sales figures, but you look at US versus Japan, and granted, the US is a much, 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 much bigger place. But Sonic 2 looks like a fail. I wouldn't say it looks like a failure, but it did not sell nearly as great in Japan as it did in America. So make of that what you will, personally.
And this might be a good point for me to interject with my own Japan experience between the two major powers of Nintendo and Sonic, because obviously
Jake, you cannot keep us on tenterhooks any longer. We need to know who's more popular between Nintendo products and Sega.
I'll let you know
in the day of 2025 in Japan.
so some experiences that I can point out. I mentioned, I think before, that we went to Tokyo Joypolis, and I couldn't help but be disappointed by, as far as everything that was in the building, the Sonic stuff was it was present. It was well lit, but it was
yeah, that's going for it. It was well lit.
It was well lit.
I love that.
Love that for Sonic.
You could see it.
You could see it, but as far as all the options of things that you could just interact with and play and experience there, the Sonic stuff was minimal in comparison. And then when we went to a place called Yodobashi in Akihabara, a huge department store full of amazing electronics and everything, Nintendo had a huge swath of space on the video game floor that we were on, whereas Sonic just kind of had a corner in the Sony area. Also, the fact that in Universal Studios there's a whole Nintendo world, and I don't think we're going to be getting a whole Sonic world anytime at an amusement park.
Definitely not.
They're going to bring back Sega World.
or in the Nintendo land, there is if you go past the bathrooms and past one sign that says "Do not enter," there's a sad, stinky, dirty Sonic mascot costume, and he's just like, "Hey kid, you want a hug from Sonic? Are you supposed to be here? Shh, 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 shh."
Yeah, and
gotta go fast.
and that's not to say that here in America, if I'm driving down the street, I see Sonic on a billboard or something like that, but I'm definitely more advertised to over here in America with Sonic stuff, whether it's I think of the Lego sets, I think of the movies, I think of the video games, I think of food tie-ins, there's
sippy cups and placemats and pajamas and in Walmart, and
they have the little juice packs for toddlers and stuff that have different popular characters' heads on the end. They have the whole Sonic line, there's Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, maybe somebody else, but I've seen those in the store.
There's Shadow, because I have that one on my shelf.
Drink your apple juice.
Drink the delicious. It was either it's either juice or that shelf stable chocolate milk. I think it was juice. Although I just imagine Shadow, drink your chalky milk. It's good for you.
Here's a chalky milk because you epic.
Because you epic.
I realize I kind of glossed over the Greg Martin. Well, we say Greg Martin. We're not sure who came up with the original initial design for American Sonic, the one that we're used to seeing on the Sonic 1 box art of the Genesis version specifically. That design, that was the softened out version of Sonic. We talked about like the characterization, but we forgot that he actually looked different now. They give him a bit more of a shiny, sort of mohawky kind of look, and I don't hate that as much as most people do, to be honest with you. I think it's fine. I'm used to it.
I know you linked that that thread on Blue Sky of the person who was editing the box art just to remove the mohawk. It took me like a solid 2 minutes to realize what they'd changed, because as far as the mohawk goes, the mohawk in those American box arts, you know, the very stylistic airbrushed look is so inoffensive to me personally, because how else are you supposed to draw Sonic? Like, I know they had there was Sega material that had like, oh, this is how he's kind of supposed to look like from the back, the Christmas tree. But I mean, for a 2D animated character, I think the mohawk works fine. In fact, it's only really noticeable in the American cartoons, where like they do treat it as like a single flat set of spines that kind of carries over to early Archie for a while.
And even then, I would argue it's not really a problem, except in the very, very rare instances from that era where you're looking at him straight on, like in that, you know, early artwork of Set AM.
Oh, yeah. Of the Kiss the Fish era.
The Kiss the Fish.
Sonic, yeah.
Yes, Kiss the Fish. Man, that is so funny that is what those concept arts are most well known for. Or you say that and people remember.
But the Greg Martin quote unquote version of Sonic does actually have 4 fingers. I've noticed that. I'm looking at it now and I'm like, oh yeah. But it was the cartoon where, and I suppose part of the reason cartoons do this is because it's easier to draw over and over again if the characters don't have nearly as many fingers real estate to deal with. So that's partly why when the cartoons came out, which is our next segment of this particular thing, that Sonic had 3 fingers and he had the mohawk and things were different now.
Honestly, I see them, you know, much like the Nicky the Hedgehog manga, as just taking these broader concepts and just doing your own thing with them. In this case, it's Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog doing, you know, turning Sonic into a Bugs Bunny.
That's pretty much it, yeah.
Bugs Bunny with a more contemporary, like, surfer dude cool attitude.
And no budget.
Or, you know, I say surfer dude, but, you know, like, lots of California slang. And I mean, he's voiced by Jaleel White.
That was like across the board sort of thing. No, he needs to be Urkel in all of our shows.
Yeah. It truly was. And hey, we've talked about that is not a bad performance. It is very unique to that Sonic. That's for sure. In
Adventures of Sonic and in Sat AM, 2 different performances of Sonic to fit the 2 versions. Really great in that moment of time. And afterwards, well,
Sonic Underground.
but that said, I don't want to, like, these cartoons sort of, I feel like they're really important for how they formed a lot of the cultural consciousness of what Sonic was. And whether you like it or not, everyone's like, oh yeah, Sonic with his chili dogs, and he's got his freedom fighters, and Sally Acorn with the tits, and, you know, all those other things. Like, this was like one of the defining elements of Western Sonic were these cartoons. Even though there were 2 disparate cartoons, one was the goof 'em up silly syndicated show, and the other was the Saturday morning, the Sat AM, if you will, story that, and this is, and I don't want to get too much into it because we've talked about this before, but it is fascinating that, we've had the Sonic Bibles, they had this idea for what Sonic was, and they had Mobius, and they had Sally Acorn, and they were doing something sort of like that with AOSDH, but Sat AM, like, the creators of Sat AM started with Len Jansen, long-time cartoon veteran, we talked about him before, basically looking at that and being like, what the fuck do I do with this game? And writing up a story bible that was nothing to do with it other than it was Mobius, Robotnik, and Sally Acorn were in it, and of course Sonic and its rings. Just taking, like you mentioned, the broader strokes of what Sonic is and doing some spinning off completely into its own thing. Like, it is still got the environmental, and I don't know how strong the environmental message really is in Japanese Sonic. It's there. You can visibly see it there. You can see the changes that are happening in the games when Robotnik or Eggman starts doing things. But it's never been quite as strong as I feel like it is in the West, especially when you got Satayem doing like in the eco-terrorism stuff with the freedom fighters. It's very, like, Len Jansen, Ben Hurst, Pat Eiley were just basically threw away everything they were given other than the basic iconography of Sonic and making their own story. And it's really good, but also it's not Sonic. I mean, it is, but it's not. It's so weird. It's like the games are there, and this is a sort of almost like Funhouse Mirror version of it. It's really cool and interesting, but also, what were they doing? Like, I say that as someone who's okay with Siam. I like it. I like its legacy. It's strange.
Yeah, I don't want to put words in any of the, like, the showrunner creators' mouths, but I mean, I would kind of understand, especially if they were aware of the other Sonic cartoon, Adventures of Sonic. I know, I can't remember exactly if they were completely concurrent, or if did they share ideas, or was it like, because I mean, if you look at Adventures of Sonic and then you look at the games, and then you probably have Sega saying, and you can't really cross-contaminate. These are different things. I don't blame them for saying, like, well, let's come up with our own thing.
Something that really, like, does well as a cartoon in its own right, that they can tell stories with, more so than the basic framework of the Sonic games.
Because, I mean, not to throw shade at a show I like for nostalgia reasons, but acknowledge it is a product of its time. Is like, would you rather have had the Sonic version of the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, where you have the characters from the games, you have environments and things from the games, but you just do, oh, this episode is a Robin Hood parody, this episode is a Star Wars parody, this episode is a body switch, everyone's turned into babies.
I mean, someone would have liked that last one, I can tell you.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, would that have been any better? Or, because I just don't, I can't, I think it's too much to suggest, like, no, I just wanted a cartoon in the 90s that was perfectly loyal to the games and had all my favorite Japanese things that I didn't even learn about until I was older. You know what I mean? I just don't think that would have happened.
I mean, like, not to jump forward, but not even Japan was doing that. Just look at the OVA.
Yeah, the OVA. Oh, man, I want to talk about the OVA, like talking about, oh, Sonic in Japan has always been consistent. And I point to the OVA and then Sonic X, because while there are lots of similarities, those are very much two different Sonics, I would argue.
I think we might as well just briefly talk about it, because we're in the cartoon era right now, and what's going on with the OVA is very much its own distinct Sonic thing. There is so much, like, inspired by what's going on in Sonic. I feel like a lot of it was inspired just by the cutscenes from Sonic CD when you look at it.
Oh, absolutely.
It feels like a span out of that. The OVA, and we've talked about it in great depth, so we're only
it's great. We love it.
It's great. It's different, though.
I love it.
It's definitely not the stuff going on in those Japanese manuals that people like to treat as the sacred texts, despite not actually being called Bibles like the other things. It's so unique. But yeah, like you're saying, they were doing their own thing, because they wanted to tell a little story. It's got more of the game stuff in it. It's got Metal Sonic in it. It's got Knuckles in it. It's like, it's not that world. It's the land of the sky, the land of darkness. The Sonic's a bit more of a dick in this one, which I feel feels a little bit more American, or maybe even a bit Western in general.
In both versions, not a dub thing. You know, we talked about that dub is not exactly inaccurate as far as the script goes and the character portrayals. Because in Japanese, like, no, Sonic he's cool, but he's also impatient. He'll just yell at Tails, tell him to shut the hell up.
because all of it's happening in a post-apocalyptic world where the society has fallen and now all these animal people live here. That's why Sonic's so pissed off all the time.
He's got to share the planet with hot monkey women princesses and whatnot.
Oh, this sucks for him. I can't. Hey, they're bringing back something from early Sonic, though. They're bringing back those hot furry women again. The vaguely furry, I suppose. that
are good at playing a hologram version of the Sega Saturn. But no, like just for an example of yes, that Sonic has not always been consistent even in Japan, like comparing the Sonic from the Sonic OVA with the Sonic from Sonic X, who is a little more laid back and more, I would dare to say, a little funnier. Oh my goodness, yes. Remember the funny episodes of Sonic X where Sonic is mugging at the camera or whining that he hates being on a cruise ship because he's scared of water and can't run around? Like, that doesn't seem very cool and collected. Oh, but I'm just teasing. But just yeah, man, just to show that things have changed on both sides of the pond constantly in the franchise.
They certainly have.
I think that for whatever reason, Sonic fans just have this weird thing about not being able to handle the idea that adaptation can do its own thing, or even wanting to acknowledge the possibility that something might be influenced by adaptation back in the main series, whereas that's something that has been a thing in, media from time immemorial. Just, looking back at the history of, shows adapting comics adapting shows, movies, video games, just all kind of bleeding into each other, and that these different versions and different writers can end up having an influence, whether these people want or not. Like, I immediately think of, we wouldn't have Harley Quinn as a character if they had only stuck to stuff from the Batman comics. Yeah. We wouldn't have Australian Kano in Mortal Kombat if they hadn't stolen that from the movie.
Well, they hadn't misinterpreted the fact that he was a Cockney man playing a character, but that just sounds like Australian to Americans apparently. So, but yeah, I get what you mean.
And I'm sure I'm speaking to I'm preaching to the choir here, but I mean, like, just, you have to understand the concept of adaptation as a whole. Like you said, time in memoriam, like, we're going back to like how they translated poems from like religious texts, or like the Epic of Gilgamesh and Beowulf and different editions of Dante's Inferno and all that kind of stuff. Those are all, I think so many people don't understand that if you want the complete perfect picture, you need to be like fluent in both languages, if not even more so. Like, not only fluent, but like probably study the equivalent of a literature degree in Japanese before you can even begin to, understand the process. And that is not to, of course, that is not to excuse like blatant mistakes or like things you don't like that might be different between versions. But yes, a lot of people just act like it's so, oh man, did you see what they changed from the Japanese version of the Sonic game? And I'm like, well, why do you think they did that? And I'm just frustrated at the fans that stop right there. They don't say, oh, I don't know, let me think about it. It's just change bad, the wind.
That's true. And like, here I am, like, getting a little bit silly about Saiyama. Like, what were they thinking? Well, they were obviously thinking of something, of adapting Sonic into a different medium in a way that people could understand. And you can personally, like, not like it very much. I think it's pretty good, but it's not my favorite Sonic thing.
And also considering that they had very little source material to work with at the time.
That's true, yeah. And they certainly did lack of it as well, just like Sega America seemed to. It was really odd. But But then you see what happened with SatM when they basically like, okay, no more SatM, but we want to make one that's got Sonic with siblings and also he's royalty, and it's the Xeroxed version of SatM with songs, and it sucks. Sonic Underground, everyone. Sorry, we're always going to dunk on it. The very idea of the show was, that's a bad example.
It was born of cynicism, so our own cynicism is warranted.
Yeah.
Yes, I was about to say, I think we know from the first time we visited, it was less, let's make a new Sonic show, than like, God, we still have the rights to this Sonic crap. What can we churn out with this? Let's add songs so we can make money off the royalties. Not the songwriters, though. Oh, boy.
Yeah, the royalties like Sonia and Manic.
We're going to come back to Sonic Underground and try to give it its due eventually. But, like, this is an example of, like, it's a photocopy of a photocopy that's gotten worse as time goes by is pretty much what happened with Sonic Underground because they didn't care.
And Athair is there for some reason.
Yeah.
That always...
Hey, but it's got Knuckles in it. It's got something from the game, so... but he's bad in it. Sorry, we don't want to make those sweeping statements about it. If you're an Underground fan... and that's your favourite version of Sonic, that's also valid, but it shouldn't be, because if you realise how it was made, sorry everyone.
Also take your medication.
Sorry, that's really mean, but true. Before we get too far off track, there's the printed media side of Sonic in America. That's, I mean, like... we'll be here all day if we try to cover all of it, but things like, you know, the promotional comic that tried adapting the Sonic Bible, the Golden Books, the mini novelizations, and of course Sonic Archie Sonic that span out of that, which is a weird sort of amalgamation of the two different cartoons in the early issues, and then they just did a bunch of Star Trek fan fiction. We've definitely talked about that, but that's another thing which has helped shape people's ideas of... Again, it's a kind of a photocopy of a photocopy because it's like a version of what was going on in the cartoons, but then it sort of like spiraled out and became its own thing. Archie Sonic is very significant, though, I think.
Yeah, Archie Sonic was one of the longest running, I think, yes, didn't it claim that title of the longest running licensed comic book after a while?
No, I think Conan still holds that title.
Okay, so Conan got it.
Maybe it's a video game then, comic book adaptation, maybe?
Video game, probably.
Okay.
You could finagle it. I mean, you know, I'm sure you could finagle it, because, I mean, if we learned anything from that H-Bomber Guy video, that the Guinness World Records are all fake anyway. Because, of course, I grew up reading Archie from the beginning, was there until the final issue. And I remember as a kid just having a hard time squaring away how different everything was, but still acknowledging it as Sonic. Like, there was stuff that would pop up in Archie where I would straight up be like, well, that's not like the games, or, you know, that's not even like SatAM, even though I hadn't seen all of SatAM there. But I just remembered pushing through it because it's Sonic, and, you know, if you know the history of Archie, sometimes that was fine and sometimes it was massive amounts of cope. So who knows?
Well, that's the thing. The thing about Archie Sonic, the most significant thing about it is it went on for so long. Like
almost 25 years,
which is why it still held this sort of like relevance to people. I feel like why people maybe were holding on to like the early Western concept of Sonic for longer than the games were willing to do so, because there was still this one going on the side. I mean, we're going to get into it more as we go to the turn of the century, but yeah, this is a long comic strip that somehow survived as long as it did.
Sorry, you went on for almost 25 years. Remember when they killed Robotnik, the main villain, barely 4 years into the book?
Yeah, they didn't want him in there. Like, no, our characters, though.
And then brought him back, I guess it was it was almost 2 years later. About a year and a half. Man, crazy stuff.
And then, as far as print media is concerned, that's pretty much the stuff that we had. UK and Europe, everyone. We've talked about it in great detail before. You know how I feel about it, but
we just did an episode on the origins of STC and how it's the better Sonic video game comic book overall.
Certainly at the time, I think. It's at least fair to say at the time.
Yes. at the time in the English language.
Yes, fair enough. That's probably the better way of putting it. But this is like, that span out of the Sonic Bibles more directly than anything else that was happening. They actually decided, no, we like this, and we'll make our own version, and this is the canon for UK and Europe entirely. This, again, Chris McFeely was on here with us not too long ago to explain that, but it's fascinating that over here, in all of the Sonic media, aside from the cartoons, like in all of the books that we were reading, Sonic's story was the Kinterball origin story, with Sonic got his speed running on a treadmill. It's so strange that was consistent over here when, like, so many other media products that were happening in Sonic were doing largely their own thing. And that's not to say they were all completely connected. STC definitely took its own choices and went off in its own direction, but all of it started from that thing. So if you're reading the Martin Adams books, if you're reading the Adventure game books, if you're reading just about anything that was popping out over here, including the Sonic the Story Ladybird book that came out, I was reminded of that just recently. All of it was that Madeline Schroeder's idea of how to save Sonic became our Sonic, like, more or less. So that's it. I can't go on about it too long because I've done it too many times over the course of this podcast. But yeah, European Sonic, and even in the Sonic Adventures book, apparently, Sonic Adventures, make sure you specify that the French comic that was
Robotnik.
Yep, that's it. The Kinterball origin was in there too. So something about it, and AOSTH Robotnik, that design was consistent over here for a long time. For some reason, we couldn't get rid of the Long John Baldry looking Robotnik. He's not Long John Baldry looking, but we think of him whenever we see him, I suppose.
The Milton Knight design.
Yeah, that's actually the correct way of putting it, I suppose. But that's Europe in its entirety is span out of that for the longest time up until, well, this is where it begins, the end of an era where it's weird. This is a joyful and sad time in many ways when we got basically the game that we all look back on with so much nostalgia and fondness, but was also the death knell for many things that were happening on the western side of Sonic. We are, of course, talking about Sonic Adventure, where the modern era began. I say that with massive air quotes because it's been modern for a very long time now, longer than any of them.
I'm going to say the modern era has outlasted the classic era by like 3
it's
times.
So strange how they keep that. To be fair, that's like a Sonic Generations thing. They've just kept that nomenclature ever since they've used that, and now we just sort of like, well, if we see the Adventures, post-Adventures Sonic, that's a modern Sonic, quote unquote, whatever. But Sonic Adventure is where it's strange to say. I still do love Sonic Adventure. I think all of us have agreed by the amount of times we've gone back to it. It's a fantastic game. It is also when Sega decided, well, we've got voiced cutscenes and stuff in this now. We can't keep doing this weird separation between the stories. We've got to try and bring it together now, and so that's what happened. It's kind of sad for me to look back to, because for me, the real rocky transition was having to adjust to this new vibe of Sonic. It's not as sudden as you'd think. I think we talked about the fact that they tried easing it in. Like, while we were dropped on planet Earth right from the start, they didn't call it that, but Sonic was in a human-ass city. But they were like, okay, he's still Robotnik, but all the characters call him Eggman, so we can transition over to that. And little things like that sort of like were peppered through it. But it was, to me, a little bit strange being like, Tails is here, he's smart now, and Sonic has his plane, the Tornado. Oh, that was his? And it's got a name? What's going on? Angel Island? It was a bit of a jump for me personally, but that's just because I was brought up on all that stuff.
Yeah. And, admittedly, I think that's another thing where it's like, yes, all that stuff was in the Japanese material all the time, but I think that there are enough people who are I'm just going to come out and say it, younger than us and just don't know because they didn't grow up with it, that didn't realize that, yes, even though all of this stuff was always in the Japanese material, we didn't have that. And, you know, for the most part, we just understood, hey, this is Sonic, this is Tails, this is Robotnik. They all behave in a certain way. And even if the finer details were different, they all largely still behaved in that same way throughout all media. And so it was like, that was enough to kind of smooth over the edges in the same way that we were able to, you know, smooth over, okay, Batman in the movies is different from Batman in the cartoon, which is different than Batman in the comics. Like, it was a lot easier to just accept, hey, there are little bit differences, but they're still all, you know, pulled from the same core.
Yeah, I think thinking back on it, I think Tails was probably the biggest change for me, just because Tails had always been a little kid, like Sonic's little, I mean, literally his little bro. But then to go back to the OVA, that was the first time I was like, oh, okay, he is like a tinkerer and he makes a body, you know, he makes the rocket propelled bodyboard.
Yeah.
But then maybe it's just me, but the fact that he kind of still looked like a little baby in the dub made it easier to accept that he was also a little boy genius. Again, I don't think this was a conscious decision, but the fact that the at least the first two Sonic Adventure games in both Japanese and English cast a child actor for, well, I was going to say for better or worse. I will just say for worse. They're both bad. Both Japanese and English performances are not very good. Sorry, the Bringus brothers and the Japanese actors. Also, like, carried that on, like, oh, okay, he is still a little kid, but there's also this. And yes, like you said, I think Tails really is the only really egregious one where it's like, in Japanese, like you said, even as far back as like the Sonic Drift games and whatnot are mentioning that he is a tinkerer and a mechanic. And that was just never touched upon in the Western continuities.
And Amy Rose obviously had the biggest, like, physical change to everyone, including all the people.
Yeah, she used to be Princess Sally.
But yeah, Amy's
Smith
change.
and Wesson.
Flaunting his God-given right to bear arms. No, the thing about Amy is, like, even though I was reading STC where Amy progressively became a much different character, I still kind of understood at that point that, oh, that's an STC thing, isn't it? that she's a tomboy and she's in a canonical lesbian relationship with a canary. I sort of was like, okay, she has a different relationship with a bird with this one. Thank you.
Amy might be the weirdest one to me. Is I know Amy was in other games besides Sonic CD. She was in the spin-off games. She's all the way up until Sonic R and all that. Was there much supplemental material anywhere aside from Archie and STC that just featured Amy doing anything? Because
Sonic
outside
Drift,
of Sonic's yeah, outside of Sonic CD, which we've talked about, is like, hey, there's Amy. Oh, bye, Amy. And I just don't know. Like, Sonic Adventure was not only like her debut, it's like time to give this girl a personality. And then they decide and let's change how she looks too. It almost seems like a
total reinvention.
Well, you didn't have to do that because I don't think most players in America or Japan know who Amy is, except she's the cute pink Sonic. But, I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just, as we're talking about differences here, I think Amy is an interesting one in that, yes, her classic design was there, but I don't know if it had much to it until like Sonic Adventure and making her a full-time member of like Sonic, Tails, Knuckles. Amy, there she is.
Yeah, it's strange. I guess because obviously for me, I had, like I mentioned, the connection to Amy in the comics, even though I acknowledge that was a different thing. But like, if you're an American and you're reading, like, Amy's just in Archie, but barely.
Oh yeah,
she's got a story, but there's not much. They're not really interested in doing stuff with Amy. I feel like they brought her in under protest in issue 25 where they did the CD adaptation.
We've said before she doesn't need to be there. Tails is also kidnapped. She shows up again a few issues later as the head of the official Sonic fan club to protest his arrest for the Mecha Madness kerfuffle. And then she disappears until the Sonic Adventure arc.
Even though it's like one of the most like she's the most changed design altogether, it's not that big of a deal really, but in general, things were different now in Sonic. So and I suppose that's just going to be what happens. And it is interesting, and I think we were talking about this before, it is interesting that they started insisting on having the changes with like Eggman's name because obviously over on N64 with Mario 64 they made the transition to Princess Peach, which I'll be honest is a better name than Princess Toadstool. That's an actual name a person might have. But Bowser stayed the same.
Oh yeah, still Bowser, still Goombas instead of what is
Karibo.
it? Not yeah, is it Karibo?
Yes.
Those little Karibos.
Yep. I mean, yeah, the Mario series is full of like localized names of things that have stuck around almost the entire time. And then the reverse of like why Wario and Waluigi have those names, it's like, well, in English it's like, oh, it's funny. Like the M and the W, that works out. And then Waluigi comes along and you're like, wait. And you have to understand what the prefix is and whatever. But Nintendo just...
Yeah, thankfully I learned that of Waluigi's existence from an issue of Nintendo Power that explained that right from the jump, so I never questioned it.
There you go. There you go. But Nintendo, the most like you would think now, the most derogatory Disney-esque video game company that's very much got everything locked down. Like, oh no, this is how we want our franchises to be perceived. Like, no, there's still tons of localization and stuff in there. Same with Pokemon, like basically in the same basket.
I immediately think of, Street Fighter, where they have, kind of massaged some things but left others completely the same. Like, I immediately think of like Akuma is Goki in Japan. Charlie was Nash in Japan, and then they combined them, so his full name is Charlie Nash. And then you've got Balrog, Vega, and M. Bison, who are still, those... They got switched around and they still haven't changed today, but as of Street Fighter 6, the explanation is, oh, those aren't our real names. Those are code names that we use as part of Shadaloo to keep our real identities from getting leaked.
So they're both true.
You cannot, like, they knew they couldn't call Balrog M. Bison when it's so close to you-know-what.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of Nintendo.
But it is interesting how, these decisions made in the 90s have basically affected pretty much everybody who's, making games in Japan that got localized, and how they have slowly but surely either continued to maintain or kind of gradually worked to bring those in line across languages.
But they were very insistent that he's Eggman now. So,
yep.
And look at all those Eggman's robots. These little things that just piled up to be like, okay, I don't know. There was a time when I was like, I don't know if I like Sonic now.
I mean, going back to what we were saying earlier, there have been some clunky versions of that. I still think that, changing all instances of Koopa Troop in Super Mario RPG to Bowser's Minions is incredibly clunky.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's Bowser, leader of the feared group Bowser's Minions.
That's bad, man. That's so bad. But yet...
I was going to say something.
Oh, sorry, you were saying?
Oh, no, maybe I'm jumping too far ahead. This would be better for like the Sonic Frontier section, but it does remind me, and I think we were just talking... Like when we talk about the Archie comics, we say like, well, it's probably easier to start with Ian Flynn's run because that's when the writing was good. But then it's hard to appreciate how good it gets unless you know of the old stuff. So I'm thinking of like, okay, when Adventure just came along and smashed the continuities together and you're like, well, he's Dr. Eggman. He's like, but that's a mean nickname that Sonic gives him. And fast forward and you have like Sonic Frontiers where Eggman literally sits down and like has a very personal log about how he reclaimed that name. And now the mighty name of Dr. Eggman will rule the world. And you don't get that unless you have that unless you have that original kind of awkward bit of smashing together. And now I think that's fantastic. Like, oh no, Eggman he reclaimed this nasty name that Sonic called him, and now he owns it. I love it.
Sonic should just start calling him Dr. Incel and
Sonic, that's problematic. You can't just come on, man. There's real things going on in the world.
But yeah, along with this, Sonic the comic ended with the adventure arc. So, and to be fair, that was going to happen sooner or later. Eggman Fleetway were just like, nah, fuck this. Basically, this comic making us money, not good enough. And all the cartoons end. But Archie continues on I say undeterred. We've already talked about the fact that they had to do an almost contractually obligated adaptation of a Sonic Adventure, which is, God, for reasons beyond their control and also reasons of Ken Pender's, is really bad. Really so bad. It's the worst.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I will never get over it. Like, I don't know this for sure. I would like to believe that they just got a memo that said, like, hey, Sonic's getting a redesign in the games. He's got green eyes and he's going to be genuinely more lanky and even more punk-like. Can you just start incorporating that design into the comics? And somebody at Archie, wasn't it Ken Penders? I don't know. It might not have been. Said, I've got an idea. Let's make the most confusing bullshit comic book this hedgehog has ever been in to explain why he has green eyes now. So I think that's 79. Oh man, I hate that issue so much because it made me angry as a kid. Like, I think I read it and didn't understand it was printed backwards until years later, and I went back and read it backwards. I'm like, this is stupid. I hate this.
What's worse about it though is, like, and I think we've talked about it before, but it's like, this explains why Sonic has green eyes and a buckle on his shoe.
Oh yeah, they even say, yeah, like Sally is like head in her hand saying, like, I don't really understand. You've got green eyes now and longer spines and even on your shoe. And he's like, don't worry about it, Sal. I'll catch you up. I'm like, catch me up, dude. I don't get it. I'm 12.
Nevertheless, Archie Sonic remained for a long time, like we mentioned, and aside from that horribly confusing, weird adaptation of Sonic Adventure, the main caveat was they had to, like, put a little disclaimer at the top saying, welcome to the world of Archie Sonic the Hedgehog, a world separate from that what you know in the games. So they'd be like, sorry, we know it's fucking weird, so just bear with us. But it's weird that was, like, with everything else that was going on in Sonic, this sort of, like, trying this synergy with the original Japanese version, they still let them keep Archie going, and, well, we know how that ended for them. So, but yeah, that
for
was
worse and for better.
Yeah, we have to put it in that order. That's true. But whatever. But also part of the quote-unquote end of an era, like, because it was basically over, but hey, take a look. It's a new Sonic cartoon that we've actually mentioned previously on this episode, but whatever. Sonic X happened! Yay! Kind of. The new Sonic cartoon made in Japan. Now they're taking control by making it absolutely the thing from... This is absolute... You know what? This is actually the Sonic story, everyone. You know those things in the manuals? That it's right here. And you remember what was in the manuals? The fact that Sonic lived on his own world and Earth was a separate... What? Sorry. Yes, basically Sonic X happened. It is the most true to the games version of Sonic. This is an attempt at doing one of those, but also it's its own thing. So
yes. I know that is so funny. You would say the most true to the game technically. Yeah.
It's more recognizably Sonic, or Japanese Sonic at the very least. It's got more things from the games, more characters from the games. They're all over the place. But also, there's always a caveat. They've also got to do what they want to do with it and make their own characters, and well, we've talked about Sonic X in great detail. We may have done some stuff with Sonic X in the past. I don't know if you've noticed on this channel.
Huh?
No?
What? No, I think I've on other episodes, I think I've talked about how Sonic X, I think I still enjoy very much. I still like it. Still recommend people check out the Japanese version. It is what it is. And I think it's a cool Sonic show that has a lot of good ideas that do not all get fleshed out or executed properly. Chief among them being like Chris Thorndike. I think I've said before, I like Chris Thorndike's story arc. I don't like the fact that the show seems to ignore that story arc for the convenience of Sonic being able to go anywhere and do anything because he's staying with a little rich boy and the the president has passed a law creating a special Sonic fund so we don't even have to pay for the scuba equipment, stuff like that. But yeah, Sonic X is the first Sonic show made with the Japanese continuity in mind after the adventure game. So, yep, there it is.
There it is. Initially, for me, I think I mentioned I was like taken aback by the fact that they were actually doing one that was closer to the game, certainly in terms of what it looked like. Sonic actually did a proper spin attack for once. I was like, oh, that's nice, because before he was doing that weird buzzsaw thing in the Western cartoons. I didn't like that so much.
Yeah.
But also, this was like, even for me as someone who was getting used to this new, the quote-unquote modern Sonic, there was a sort of a disconnect with this Sonic. I did like him because I think he's still quite cocky and quite arrogant, and he gets a little bit silly sometimes. But also, this was a Sonic I was seeing sleeping on roofs and stuff. He was like laying around a lot, and I understand now. I actually will say one thing I read in the manuals is Sonic would often spend a lot of time resting and sort of like waiting for the next adventure to happen. So that was there, but it was still a bit of a jump for me. Like, oh, so Sonic's kind of just this guy, and Sonic's in it a lot. But also, he's off doing his own thing a lot. Like, he runs off and leaves his friends behind. And I'm not saying that as a criticism. That is just what this Sonic did. It threw me off a little bit.
Yeah, see, to go all the way back, was that something that was more in, like you're talking about, like Japanese game manuals, Sonic's independence? Like, Sonic has friends, Sonic loves his friends, he doesn't hang out with them all the time like he does in, like we said, a Sat AM or an Archie comics. Sonic goes and does his own stuff. He values that. And I think that's very much a thing that is established more now. I kind of love that the joke of that has come along from like an unofficial catchphrase of the franchise being, hey, long time no see. Like in between these big adventures, Sonic isn't necessarily like calling up Tails to just go get a chili dog because they have lives outside each other. I don't know.
No, that's a really important point to make, though. That is something we start seeing in like in adventure. That's the way it starts for me, because obviously these characters didn't have much dialogue before in the game. So yeah, these characters are doing their own thing a lot of the time. That does throw me. That's part of what threw me off a little bit, because I'm used to Sonic having his friends around all the time, because they're usually working together to beat Eggman, because they're freedom fighters a lot of the time. I guess that was sort of that weird disconnect for the Western side of Sonic and Japanese Sonic that's just kind of became what it is now. That's interesting. Yeah,
just trying to especially now, deal with like some people's, I don't know if culture shock is the right term, but like why they might be put off by even the Japanese version of Sonic X. Like, well, Sonic is so lazy and he's too aloof, or I don't know if anyone's out there saying that, but it's a little different if all you're used to is especially those American comic books. But no, I think Sonic X overall is pretty solid. Now, here's the split, at least as far as I will say, as far as me goes, is I don't know how much influence the English dub had on people, because that was also, you want to start talking about differences in Sonic character and adaptations and localization. Everybody knows my opinion on, I don't like it. I think it's not good. I think it's not my Sonic X. But then, I mean, you have the whole thing where, and I mean, we've hashed this out. I don't know how germane it is to this discussion. You had that cast replace the English cast, but then you still had the same, I assume, the same localization going on at Sega, and yada yada yada. Revisit our Shadow episode on how the importance of tone and voice direction is in a story.
But the thing is, Jeremy, and it's worth pointing out, like, it is a valid opinion to have, that Jason Griffith Sonic was peak Sonic, and it just happened to coincide with the Sonic people had when they were growing up, so it's the best version of Sonic. And isn't it weird how when Jason Griffith left Sonic, it just happened to be bad now and ruined forever anyway?
That is a thing people say. I do think that is a thought that people have in their brains. I cannot deny that for sure.
Yeah.
And that's all I'll say about that.
So, like, at this point, at the end of an era, so to speak, like, it's basically over. It's so over for Sonic the Hedgehog, if you're old. But to be fair, like, most of the old fans have probably moved on at this point. They're like, well, these 3D games aren't for me, whatever. So if Sega and Japan want to, like, take control again and have their storyline synergy across the products, that's fine. But if you're the kind of person who grew up and loved Sonic a certain way, it's going to be a little bit alienating. It's me. That's just me. And I will say, there were, like, on a personal note, for years throughout the 2000s, Sonic just wasn't appealing to me. And I tried. I was there for Sonic. You know, I tried Sonic Heroes. I played Shadow the Hedgehog. Hell, I even played 2006. And for me, on a personal level, a lot of what I liked about it wasn't really there anymore. And I don't think that necessarily has to be just because it wasn't as Western now. But, you know, it was during that time period, which a lot of people cite as the best parts of Sonic, just wasn't for me. And I don't know, I can't say, like, Sonic necessarily got more for kids, because Sonic is for kids at the end of the day. But I feel like some of it, and maybe it is partly due to the localization, because I was, like, being forced the for kids stuff.
Which is Sonic becoming more for kids.
Yes. I feel like Sonic was a little... It's weird. Sonic was doing, like, really weird, edgy stuff, and he was doing, like, these complicated storylines, like they tried doing these ambitious storylines in 06. But during that time, it felt like Sonic was... It was baby stuff for me. I don't know. Maybe it's because I was a young adult and I was like, oh, it's not the Sonic I remember. I remember when Sonic was cool because he had a comic in Britain where I was born. But I don't know. I think the biggest thing for me is Sonic started feeling a lot more anime. And that's not me trying to be like, and I hate anime. I loved anime. I was loved shit, but I don't know. I think, like, the anime influence of Sonic was definitely a lot stronger there, and sometimes it was bad anime. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
I think it's just the fact that they actually had, like, real stories in the games now, so that influence that was always there comes through more in the storytelling.
You're right, and I feel like for me, what I like most about Sonic is the fusion of the flavors of that little bit of the West and a little bit of the Japanese side. But when it's one flavor, I don't know if it's quite that palatable for me. So maybe that's just it. That's my personal thing. I don't know how anyone else felt. Probably not the same as me. It's fine.
I can definitely relate. I think this era definitely is more of just, I just want to say you have to get in your feelings if you lived through it, because that's the only way to explain. Like, I do think the and I mean anime influence, I guess that's probably a proper term, because a lot of you know, the two adventure games feel like like types of anime I was watching. I know specifically Maikawa, famously writer of Sonic Adventure 2 and other Sonic games, talks about like the anime and manga that influenced that. And but just to, instead of reiterating what you just said, Faulerro, I'll just say that like I think a lot of it does still come down to execution, whether in English or Japanese, because for all the flaws of the English version of Sonic Adventure 2, and there are some, like we said, there's a difference between like, oh, I just don't like how the English sounds, or I prefer the Japanese actors, versus like straight up translation errors. But I still think Sonic Adventure 2 is a more fun, complete story, and it's a story about Shadow the Hedgehog, so maybe that's why it works. And also, like, Sonic Adventure 2 is the mishmash of, like, to me, the Western and Japanese continuities, because you have
drama,
a very dramatic, very anime-esque story with Shadow and Maria, but also like that is straight up set in America, like in California, with the US Army equivalent, even though they're, you know, like a global force. And I don't think that works without that. But then you have, I'm sorry it's the punching bag, but then you have Sonic 06, which is also a big, you know, supposedly trying to be a big fun anime story with demons and princesses, and it's just the most hackneyed, boring shit imaginable. And that's both versions. I've said I don't think the execution is so not good by compared to just a game they did less than 10 years ago.
Yeah, and to kind of build on that point, I think it also comes down to just the way the story is presented as well. Like, the badly marionetted characters in Sonic 06.
Yes.
Just barely being able to express emotion, and the, you know, interminable pauses between every line of dialogue. It's like, the story I think would have come off a little bit better if the presentation was just a little bit punchier, a little bit more, you know, actually had some flow to it. You know, and to be fair, there were elements of Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 that were similarly stilted, but it didn't feel as bad as it did in Sonic 06.
Yeah. And not to put words in her mouth, we did ask Wendy if she had any thoughts on this subject, and I thought it was interesting that she acknowledged that a lot of the it's important to point out like big script changes, because I mean, not only do I think that's fascinating, but also makes me think like, hey man, if they ever took another shot at especially these adventure games, they could get it right this time. But that a lot of the games, including Sonic 06, like Sonic 06, Sonic Unleashed, a lot of the quote unquote 4Kids era games that I like to harp on, the script adaptions, aside from Shadow, which is a travesty, aren't that different. Like, they're pretty faithful adaptions. And as she points out, a lot of it comes down to the voice direction. And I would say, like, just your preferences. If you prefer the Japanese cast, then yeah, it's always going to be different in English, because it has to be. And I appreciate those thoughts from Wendy. And keep doing what you're doing, Wendy. You're a gem.
Absolutely.
Yeah, without Wendy's help, I would not be able to read those Japanese manuals that I'm referencing a lot.
Yes.
And that is sort of the tragic thing. And I know we've talked about it before, but I would have loved to see a game in that era with that cast, that English cast, that had a different director, like maybe even the director from the more modern games. Because, like, you compare Mike Pollock's performance in, you know, the later, like around Unleashed time, compared to, you know, Frontiers or Shadow Generations or whatever have you, it's basically a different performance.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like, not to mention like the Sonic X dub itself. Even that transition, like, I know I've said I don't like, back in our Shadow episode, like, I don't like that cast. They are markedly better in that first game than the Sonic X dub.
Yeah, like
Sonic X dub is
it is not the cast's fault. We've all heard them do great performances in other stuff. It has always come down to direction, and they just did not have good direction in in that era of games. And I would argue that the direction was never great in the pre 4Kids games either, but it was at least memorable in that way. I think like the ham at least added to it a little bit, but I would not say that those are good performances.
If you go by the and speaking of hearsay and scuttlebutt, but if you go by the stories that have come out of that adaptation from Lonnie Minella, who's been been away from the franchise so long, she has no reason to hold back. Like they really did the best they could. It seemed like at the time Sega was like, yeah, we need to adapt these into English, but let's do it in the weirdest, most like difficult way possible.
Yeah, a lot of those decisions do sound like they were, kind of done at the behest of whatever Sega of Japan wanted, whether it made sense in English or not.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And I acknowledge that, again, could be exaggerated for the sense of a good story, but it's definitely unlike the creation of Sonic, that console wars, those anecdotes, that makes sense. Like I can see
you can't explain Terria any other way.
Look at all those Eggman's robots and hit shot, all of that. And so I have an easier time believing those for sure. Don't think this is I don't mean to take it down the voice actor thing again, but that is another like difference between Japan has had the same cast since Sonic Adventure, bar unfortunate passings away, and the US couldn't be them. Time to change them out every couple of years. Like the fact that Sonic has stayed, Roger has played Sonic for a long time. It's been Roger and Mike Pollock as Dr. Eggman have been the longest concurrent, but we've still gotten people swapped out for various reasons. And, I think that's a whole other episode, man.
We got to do an episode on the voices and upset everyone. But this is a taste of that, everyone. So if you hated this, wait until we go into full detail. Just to bring it back to the actual, to the West versus American thing, and actually just the stories in general, the final note on that is just, I feel like, yeah, you're right. Sonic Adventure 2 was a good story, and I really enjoyed that one. But from Sonic Adventure 2, maybe up to just like Unleashed, there was this weird sort of identity crisis for Sonic stories, because they are so inconsistent. If you look at Heroes, Shadow, 06, and like even some of those like which are still beloved in their weird way, the storybook games. Sonic felt really strange and odd during that time period, and I feel that's part of what pushed me away as well, is that sort of like, what are we doing here that was going on with Sonic? And they didn't start getting on track again until Unleashed, and I'm not the world's biggest Unleashed fan, but I can tell that they were trying something there, and it was a bit more consistent and solid at that point.
Yeah, like English adaptation aside, I think Unleashed actually strikes a really good balance, where it is, sort of the almost swashbuckling shonen adventure kind of thing, but also with a hefty number of, kind of fun slapstick gags and lighthearted in tone, where it's got, kind of the deeper story, but it's not afraid to get a little silly with it here and there.
Yeah, Unleashed is one where I think I've warmed on the story more when, like Adventure 2, I see it more as it's a story about Sonic helping Chip, and again, much more palatable in the Japanese version than it is necessarily a Sonic story, because
it barely is a Sonic story, let's be honest.
Yeah, he's there, he's doing things. Sometimes it's usually he's the werehog, which, if you like the werehog, that's fine. But yeah, like that is what I point to, and this might be getting into one of our modern Sonic points, is people hate it when, or I say people, combative people who are very purist
online
in their terminally online. Good.
I'm just kidding.
Good one. Yes. Well, if they're still on Twitter, they are to me. Damn it.
Because you're a subhuman to Elon Musk, and anyway,
I don't know. We got to start.
Cut that out of the podcast.
Yeah,
No,
probably.
staying in, goddammit. We're making our statement here on this Sonic episode. Anyway.
Some people don't like it when Sonic jokes because, oh no, that's an American thing. And Sonic, Sonic making jokes and whatever. And like Unleashed is funny. There are, like you said, there are slapstick.
There are a lot of jokes, and people talk about how all the jokes and colors and whatever. Don't forget, those were adaptations of Japanese scripts. They might be different jokes, but there were still jokes.
I have not revisited like the translated versions of those games, but yeah, we know straight from the horse's mouth the writers who worked on those games who have said, hey man, yeah, the hate we got was really weird because all we did was had every single syllable and word and letter was approved by Sega, and they gave us like lists of changes that had to be done. So I mean, that's probably another aspect of this. Like now when you talk about differences between American and Japanese Sonic, like, well, all of those are seen and approved by the Japanese side. Like every pencil line of IDW goes to somebody in Sega of Japan.
Certainly
from what
does.
I know.
That's kind of the thing. Japan decided, hey, chili dogs, we like those. Let's put them in our games now. That started with and that's when we started getting these more Western things. Japan were the ones who were like, no, we need to. Okay, now we've decided we want to actually acknowledge these things.
His family name is Robotnik.
Yeah. I mean, that happened
Yeah, I'm trying to think of other stuff. I'm sure there is.
Knuckles was adopted by a Jewish family.
Sonic has a guitar in one of those pieces of promotional art. Oh no, just like inside. I don't think that's true, but that is interesting because basically this is where we get into the point where the Western side of Sonic starts creeping its way back in there, much to the chagrin of so many people who thought they were free of that after all these years. And that's it all kind of started, it started with Sonic Colors. That was the portent of the end times. But it also, in a weird way, I feel like some of this started with, and I hate to say it because it's really bad in hindsight, but some of this started with Sonic Twitter, when they started being like, yeah, we know we suck. Please like us. We're bad. We're bad.
That particular shift came about around the same time as Sonic Boom started.
Was that around then? Oh, man. Well,
it was about 2014, 15.
Yeah.
Now, the Twitter did start becoming more active around Sonic Colors because of the big change of they were saying.
But it wasn't because it didn't become weird Twitter until around the Boom era.
Right.
Yes, I agree.
Fair enough. But it is like what people call the quote-unquote meta era of Sonic, which is, God, I hate that naming. That's so bad. I can understand that this is a point where people are upset about Sonic because, the cynicism regarding Sonic of being like, hey, I'm cool, right, because I suck, is bad. But people tie that into the Sonic Colors English adaptation that we've talked about. And I just don't think that's fair because, come on, Sonic, that was good. Sorry, I hate to say it was good.
I would really like, I'm not saying the Sonic Twitter and the people behind it at the time did not have influences on things that happened.
Right.
Like, talking about like fan things or bringing things to like, executives' attention, like, hey, like people on our social media responded well to this, but I would bet my bottom dollar that I'm sorry, there's no fucking way that like the people who were writing Sonic games at the time even knew that Twitter existed.
No, definitely not. Colors is interesting because it's so maligned now by annoying people. But it's not that I don't understand it, because in many ways it was a change. It wasn't as stark a change as they made out. We just mentioned Sonic had jokes in Unleashed, the one everyone really likes now.
He's always been a funny guy. I mean, even, come on, man, even going back to the like we said, the promo comic with the fangs and the furry women, like Sonic is zipping around and cracking jokes and acting cool. And he has always been a humorous fellow.
He has. And The thing is, I really think Colors was a step up, because I was begging for a change for the longest time, because I wasn't really getting attached to Sonic for a while. So, and maybe they course corrected a bit too much at times. We'll cover Colors in greater detail in the future. We've got to. Maybe it's a bit obnoxious and silly and sometimes, and Sonic moved on from like the dry metaphorical character that he was in many things to basically an egotistical motor mouth, which, to be fair, that's kind of Sonic to me. That's kind of the Sonic I grew up with. He was kind of a little asshole.
Sonic being a motor mouth, I definitely think is like an American cartoon thing. Yeah. But compared to those, I still don't think Sonic in Colors or even Lost World. I mean, people hate Lost World too, but they try and lump Colors in there with it. Like, oh, it's the same. They're so bad. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, I'm not going to defend all of Lost World, but it's not the exact same quote unquote slop. But like compared to movie Sonic and like Prime Sonic, two recent examples, one that I think works and one that doesn't work at all, in my opinion, of a motor mouth Sonic who needs to shut the fuck up and is kind of a moron. Like, no, the Sonic in game, in Sonic Colors or Sonic Generations, or even now, I don't think is even compares to those. Like, yeah, he does talk more in Sonic Colors, but like you said, that was part of the change. Sonic is now, he's not going to, in this particular story in Sonic Colors and whatnot, he is not, the story is not happening around him. He is actively, this is an adventure with Sonic and Tails and we're fighting Dr. Eggman, like the classic games. Oh my god, I said it.
Like people wanted Sonic and Tails again. And so here it is. It's Sonic and Tails, and Sonic is the main character this time. And yeah, of course Sonic's going to take the... And you could say that maybe he goes off a bit too much, and I will admit some of those jokes don't hit the same way as they might have.
Yeah, that's fine.
But it coincided with them changing... Well, no coincidence, this has probably happened on purpose, with them changing up the voice cast. And so, like, for you, this could either be, like, in my case, a double blessing, or for you, like, if you're the kind of person who really liked the previous cast, it's doubly bad. So, I get it.
Yeah.
But also, please don't attribute Roger Craig Smith to the downfall of your beloved franchise. Come on, he was just playing a character, and and he was doing the best he could with this script, which is pretty good, I think. And by golly, I'm glad they didn't go with the voice direction he had in the flipping Alton Towers ride, because I was like, oh no, it's going to be more of this now.
I mean, it's like we always say, like, don't blame the voice actors, blame the company behind the voice actors.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And I would just say again, like, not to go down into it, but I mean, this was the internet age. Like, people were on the internet. I remember the discussion on Colors, and it was much more even and split than people would have you believe it now. Like, no, there were tons of people, like you said, there were people throughout the entire era who, like myself, did not like the 4Kids cast, did not like some of the story decisions, and Colors was a breath of fresh air, and a lot of people who just didn't care either way. I think in the circles I was running in, it was more people who were like, whatever, I'm kind of done with these new games, and that's, but that's how it was. I just think there's been a lot of revisionist history.
Yeah.
And that does go both ways, as far as, like, we were talking about the games from, like, Heroes on, as far as in the like games as a whole, the games industry, those games were not seen as good, and that was the dark ages of Sonic. Whereas, now revisiting them, it's like, man, I wish we still had games like these, as far as, like, what would you call it? Not even AAA, but like B games.
The production quality, or
just in general. Like, revisiting Shadow the Hedgehog is like a game I don't know, now that I've revisited it, don't know I would play again anytime soon, but I'm like, yeah, I can see why people really go ham for this game. And I don't just completely dismiss it alongside, like, Sonic 06, but just saying, like, you need a bigger perspective on these things.
Yeah, I remember just, it feels like just a few episodes ago that I first learned from y'all that there are people who said that Sonic Colors is a bad game, and I'll still stand on the hill of like, y'all need to go outside and touch grass.
Oh yeah. Which
Sonic Colors is a good game.
Sonic Colors, I feel like, is perfectly in the tragedy of the Sonic franchise, is that most people, when they say it's a bad game, are talking about the troubles the modern ports had, which aren't perfect, are much better, but at the same time, I would say if you got the original, maybe just play that one on an emulator. Because like people tend to associate that. I think there's a huge split on Unleashed with that, where people tend to associate like the gameplay and the story is the same thing when they're very different. Like you can play a game, can be fun and have a bad story, or vice versa. And I feel like Sonic fans don't fully grasp that sometimes.
I feel like people have been becoming more positive on Unleashed in recent years, but that's that's only a small fraction of the entire thing of what we're talking about today.
Oh yeah, well, partially because now it's finally playable.
Yeah, especially with the recompiled. Yeah,
it's definitely a little bit revisionisty though, because some people are like, "Man, this game was everyone always thought this game was good, and I loved it." And I'm remembering, no, actually, when this came out, it wasn't quite as positively received. It was a very split, just like the gameplay modes.
Yeah. I mean, I still remember like the discussions online about, people loving the daytime stages, either not very much liking or straight up hating the nighttime stages, and criticizing Sega when they said, like, do you know how hard it is to make just a bunch of daytime stages? And they're just like, well, just take the extra time to do that.
Yeah. But we have to put one out every 2.5 years or we won't make money, or even, okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a little mean. I think this is all why we joke and say that the storybook games go hard on YouTube, because I don't know how many people have actually played them recently.
God, I'm going to get around to actually playing them at some point, so I can be like, I can be one of the only people, like, unlike the fans of the biggest fans of the game itself, I'll be able to claim to have played it. So,
sorry, that's a little mean, but you can't look me in the eye and say it's not true.
Yeah, we're gonna have to cover Sonic Colors at some point, I think.
Oh yeah,
yes, and I know we're jumping around a little bit. I mean, Sonic Boom is in there too. I feel like we just had an episode on that.
Listen to our episode 80 of our podcast if you want to hear our opinions on it. But hey, it was a Western Sonic for the first time in a long time. It was a whole franchise they tried to make, and in the end, it had a good cartoon, and the rest exists.
Died like a sick dog. Which actually is so, man. We're gonna have to cover the Sonic Boom games. They are on our docket. But as far as I know, like the Wii U game, really bad. All those portable games, not as bad. So it kind of sucks that the franchise did die, because what came after the bad game was a pretty good cartoon and 2 perfectly serviceable portable games, and then it died.
It is nice that they actually tried to do something separate again, like back in the day. It's like they are suddenly going like, okay, something for the Americans now. That's basically what they were going for with it, because that's what they were going for. But didn't work out great. But hey, we like the cartoon, so whatever.
I was on board. I really love that art that came out of Sega Japan of the 3 Sonics, the classic, modern, and Sonic Boom Sonic. I'm like, oh yeah, there they are. I can deal with this. And then I'm just... it's that picture of Stalin. The other person just fades away. Sonic Boom Sonic.
Deleted from history.
Oh. Styx is still there somewhere, at least, we know.
I hope so. So we don't repeat ourselves, go listen to episode 8 if you want to hear more thoughts on it, but the basics are... the basics. It was alright, and it's cool that they tried something different, and bless them for it. But Sonic Boom, quick side note worth talking about is that weird time during, I don't know, was it the 2010s, where Sega decided to be like, actually, the games take place in 2 different worlds, so to speak. One human world and one Animal World, and people freaked the fuck out at this weird, vague statement because they were like, no, you can't do that. We can't have Mobius and Earth again. And all of us Westerners, I mean me, were like, yes, I'm the sicko at the window, like, yes, bring back the two worlds. It doesn't make any sense why they swap between two worlds in games, but do it anyway. And people freaked out and were upset. And in the end, it turned out to be nothing. It was not meant to be taken literally, apparently.
It to me, it always seemed weird that they were basically saying like, "Hey, how we did it in Sonic X, that's how it works."
Yeah.
There are two worlds in alternate dimensions, and yes, the games swap between them. And then somebody said, basically, I feel like somebody asked, how come the games haven't ever acknowledged that? And then they realized before they made the next game, yeah, never mind, that was fake.
What we didn't mean literal worlds. I mean, like, there's a world of sorts where humans are, and there's a world where animals are, in the same way that Disney World is its own world. I don't know.
Yeah, I think now they've basically settled on that all the classic games filled with magical furries are on the magical islands, and then the main continents are where the humans usually hang out.
Yeah.
And hey, we're slowly getting drip fed like more. That is getting expanded by like the Tails tube things, and we've got Professor Victoria now, and so hey, they are moving towards something, and I think that is an addition to, not to jump ahead, but now that they have established an official Sonic lore team that is overseen by both American and Japanese kings of Sega.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
We'll get to that, but that's a whole thing. But just to basically close out this long little section of things getting a bit more Western before things start actually blending together successfully, like you were implying there. Sonic Forces happened. It sucks. It's written badly. Sonic's barely a character in it. It sucks. It was like a whiplash to the success of Mania. But they kind of did a Sat AM for some reason.
Oh yeah. That
Pretty
reveal
much.
trailer, I remember thinking this literally feels like the opening to Sat AM. And hey, for all of the criticisms I have on the Sonic Twitter, I will always give props to Aaron Weber for redlining that script and trying, from what appears to me, trying desperately to be like, this doesn't make sense. People are going to hate this. Please, for the love of God. And Sega just being like, it's too late. It's too late. Ship it.
But at least they tried to do something. It was, I don't know whose idea it was to capture that weird Western 90s Sonic magic with this and have Eggman take over, but they never committed to the bit, and it didn't work, and we'll get into it one day, but hey, at least they did something, I suppose.
They cucked Infinite forever.
Yeah.
His living legacy.
But then, once that was out of the way, we started getting into a quote-unquote aligned continuity. Not really, but basically, things like we've mentioned before, I think IDW Sonic was kind of like one of the starts of this, where they were like, the Archie comic is dead.
Long live the Archie comic.
Yeah, kind of. Basically, because they were like, okay, we're going to bring a bunch of people from the Archie comic who did the good stuff, bring them on to make this new comic, but we can't let that shit happen again. We can't. We can't go through it again. So we are going to make absolute sure that we know what's going on in this comic. We're not going to just ignore it and let the Americans do whatever the Americans do. That's where IDW came from. It's basically Sonic Forces happened, and then they were like, okay, we've got a basis of a story, and we'll build it from there. That's more or less what they did with IDW, and
still going strong.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? It's going strong, and it's interesting that they did that. That they actually started caring about having a side story in Sonic going on that's more or less canon to the games. It's sometimes a little bit unsure, but one that Japan was like, okay, this has our seal of approval.
Yeah, and speaking of Japan, not to date the podcast, but just saw that they announced they are still translating the graphic novels into Japanese. They're about to release, I think it's volumes 7 and 8 over there. So I can't tell you how well they sell, but well enough for them to keep doing it. So that's got to count for something.
Cool.
So it's cool to have this sort of collaboration, even if it is under the strict watchful eye of Sega of Japan. But I don't think it's. I'm sort of like, I don't think it hurts them too much, the creators. I feel they're allowed to not just create cool, interesting ideas, but also do so with it having that unique official Sonic flavor that maybe they were trying to create in like post-reboot Archie, but also they were dealing with left holdover Archie stuff. So, and I like IDW Sonic a lot, but I do tend to fall behind on it because I don't always feel the need to catch up quite as desperately as I did when I was reading post-reboot Archie, when I was like, oh shit, what's going to happen this time? Where is this going to go? What weird shit are we getting next time? But it's still really excellent and example of how you can do a thing that's in tune with Sega and have this more game-like feel that connects to Sonic's now connected lore. Even if sometimes it does feel like they're being a little bit held back, and there are some weird sort of details. We obviously see the examples of where Sega have been like, no, you can't have that character make that face. And I suppose it's their brand, so they get to decide. And of course, it is a bit strange that there's no humans in it whatsoever, even though they go to a human location from the games and it's all animals there. But aside from that, I will say, the kids, they cannot conceive of how good they've got it with this comic. I'm sorry, young generation. I get it. You can have your criticisms, but holy cow, this is a really solid comic.
Yeah, I really, as much as I also have big criticisms on, them making them change the very funny art of Blaze doing a cartoon face, I do step back and say, okay, like Archie did some crazy stuff. I cannot imagine post Archie reboot, post Death of Archie, like they'd let them do the Metal Virus arc. Like that is a crazy arc that like the very concept, I wonder when it was pitched, like if Sega was as like tight-assed and against like creativity or wanting Sonic to be different as people think, like I cannot imagine pitching the Metal Virus arc to like Japanese businessmen at Sega, and I'm just being in general, and thinking them go, having them go, yeah, sure, sounds great, which is what they did.
Let's make toys of this in a decade.
Yes, exactly.
It's so strange because this was an Ian plan, as far as I understand, it was an Ian Flynn plan for Archie, right? Yes. And they let him carry it over, essentially, before he got to use it. So this wasn't something he had thrust upon him. This was a huge story arc that took up so much of real estate in the comic and was really important. And yeah, Sega were like, all right, you just turn Charmy B into a zombie, that's fine.
Yeah. Or even stuff like Mr. Tinker, like we've talked about. Like that is the closest we will get to acknowledging Kintober in the real canon to the games, according to Sega. That's what they say about these comics. And I think like you gotta give the creative team and Sega a little credit with stuff like that. Admits your criticism that, okay, they aren't entirely opposed to, they are not banging the gavel saying like, no, all of that Western cartoon stuff that we don't want any association with that. I think on some level they are trying. And I've said, I jokingly brought up the lore team, and we're about to talk about like the time period between announcing that and them actually having an impact on things like right now, like Shadow Generations and whatnot. But like, I think that shows that they are really trying. They want this to be a worldwide thing, and it all needs to make sense and also be appealing in its own special Sonic way.
And if you get bogged down with how Sonic's characterization is, and to be fair, I can get it to a point, you're missing the forest for the trees there, because this is a new Sonic, and that's new Sonic's that's connected to the old Sonic in a way that's hopefully a good compromise. I think it is. By golly, they've got the Eggperial City there, and sometimes I'm like, this just smacks of Robotropolis. Like it's it's really good.
Yeah, turning the the funny classic concept of Eggman Land, the giant amusement park, into like, well, yeah, of course it was going to also be a super city as well. Mm-hmm. That just makes sense. Now, where all of this combining continuities and everything has to be canon with the games kind of falls apart when you get to the currently wildly successful live action movie series and the latest Sonic cartoon, Sonic Prime, because well, there you go.
So they are two different things in their own right, because the Sonic movie series, and we've talked about these in depth, listen to our episodes about it, those were in development, I feel, for a very long time, the Jeff Fowler idea for what the new Sonic movie was going to be. So I feel like, obviously, it was separate to what they were, them trying to make this aligned continuity. So, I'm sorry, I can't keep using that with Luke in the call. That's really just not...
It's okay, I'll just keep silently judging you.
But like all of this stuff was separate to these movies, which were always going to be their own thing, and they were in development for a long time. So but the Sonic movies are so very much their own world, and especially that first one and that Knuckles series, which we've had great laughs about, but Jesus Christ, what were they doing? But and people will criticize them, and understandably so, because they are so oftentimes so very unsonic, and sort of more vibe with, at the very least, what a Western idea, what your average regular Joe Schmo might think about what Sonic is. But then they'll just do a fucking Sonic Adventure 2 adaptation that blows your mind, and you're just like, yeah, that's... So, the series is its own thing, and it's so weird, but I really am happy that they exist, even if some people are upset that it's probably shaping what other people think Sonic is now, and I get that to a point. But also, Sonic's been so many things over the years, so what's one more? And it's wildly successful, and it's going to have these effects on things. Oh well, it's good.
Yeah. I can't remember who said it, whether it was on our episode on it or someone else, but back in the adventure era, without the meshing of the continuities, and you wouldn't have Sonic Adventure 2, and then you wouldn't have a pretty spot-on adaptation in a movie 20 years later, because of all that stuff that just works. Like like I said, the super dramatic death of Maria and the military, like that just straight up goes into the movie. Yep. It's pretty crazy, man.
And this is like, they have like drawn a hard line. I'm sorry, we can't have Earth also have loads of furries living on it. We can't do that in this version. It's not a cartoon. So that's fine that they also continue the tradition of having two worlds, one family.
I saw that in the outline and it made me smile.
Sorry, I had to. But it's... even if it's their own thing, they're pulling... If we pointed out before, that it's weirdly sort of evocative of that early version of the Sonic Bible, with Sonic living in a small little town. But aside from that, it's... I'm glad this series exists, because it keeps Sonic relevant. And you can have your own opinions as to whether or not it's good that Sonic is like this in these films, but I'm happy for it. So I'm glad that this Western part of Sonic is real and successful,
because it is so much its own thing. It's more palatable than, I'll just segue right into, than Sonic Prime, where I just think they wrote, this is supposed to be the Sonic from the video games that just came out, and why is he acting like this? This is not... See, this is I think where you actually have like to stand on when you say, well, they are writing Sonic like he's not Sonic, and it makes him look not cool. And I mean, we did a whole series on Sonic Prime. We don't need to relitigate that, but hey, yeah, I think most of people's criticisms about the games and the comics actually apply to Sonic Prime. So
yeah, it's canon to the games, except it's not really, and also it doesn't matter in the end. It 06'd itself, so whatever.
Yeah, I think they just lied and said that because they were still getting the lore team together, and they're like, yeah, it's like the games, sure. It looks like the guy from the games, right? That counts.
It's so weird how I'm like, the flippin' Sonic movies are so distinctly their own thing, but feel way more in tune to the games, despite not looking like things from the game. It's so weird how but Sonic Prime has all these games characters from the games and doing all these things from the games, but also it isn't because they're doing fucking pirate shit, and I don't know. I can't with that show.
We never got a Cowboy World.
No, we never got the Cowboy World and Maria Robotnik on the horse. Oh.
Adios, Shadow the Hedgehog.
Anyway, we never have to talk about Sonic Prime again, but we have to acknowledge it because that's a Western Sonic adaptation, but it's not a good one. I'm sorry. No shade to everyone who worked on it who tried to be like, I'm going to go out of my way to make this look amazing and have all these cool little Easter egg nods to Sonic's moves over the years. And I'm like, you guys did great. But you were making a masterpiece out of dog shit, so
yeah, sorry, that's been a theme in this is, hey, we did a bunch of episodes on Sonic Prime. We do point out all the things we did like.
Yeah, we did.
But yes. I think, but yeah, we did talk about Tails Tube. I think Tails Tube is a great idea. I think probably came about because of those Twitter takeovers, maybe something that was an idea that they both came about together organically. But yeah, Tails Tube, literally, here is Tails explaining how the Sonic universe works now.
Yes, the official online guide to the Sega-sational world of canonical Sonic. Sorry, I had to say that thing I put in the outline. It kind of is.
And there's been a couple of big revelations, like the aforementioned, like, yeah, no, humans still exist. They live over here and the furries over here. No, it's not segregation. Don't use that word. Nobody used that word. But yeah, I really like them. I think they're very, I mean, I don't know what else to say except they're very adorable, like some very cute moments with just characters in general. And I like how they use the little, I guess would you call them ping tuber models?
They kind of are, yeah. They're very, yeah. Well, they're not ping tuber. They are actually full on VTuber models because they do move.
Okay.
Move around, but they're really cute. I really love those little designs. And all of this came out right before Sonic Frontiers, pretty much, to be like, okay, this is going to be the game where things that happened mattered again, so we need to make sense out of that. Bless them for trying.
Sonic Frontiers was another big change because, holy shit, Ian Flynn, that guy who did the good comics, let's just bring him on. And depending on who you are, it was either one of the best things that's happened to the franchise in a long time, or the Book of Revelation seals have been broken, and it's
the trumpet sound.
The ocean's turned to blood, and wormwood has crashed into the ocean. And those people are wrong.
Isn't it funny, though, like, for the longest time, people have been demanding Ian Flynn should write some Sonic games. And then he gets to do so and like, oh, no, actually, this is bad. I don't think they're the same people. I can't really.
No, it's the, I love that stupid image somebody made of, like, what isn't it, two Goombas arguing? And it's, yes, the thing is, those are not the same people. But of course, yeah, the people complaining about it are much louder and more obnoxious.
Yeah.
And we could probably go for another hour, which we will not. But the weird thing about Sonic Frontiers is you want to talk about changes in localization is how they handled the Japanese version of the main game was super weird. The director of the game went and basically rewrote the entire script, introduced a bunch of weird plot holes that shouldn't have been there. And I don't speak fluent Japanese. I just occasionally look up people who know what they're talking about. And from what I understand, it didn't exactly go over well with the Japanese Sonic fandom, who did like this game. This game, Frontiers, sold well in Japan.
Yeah, for the first time in a long time, it did really well. This one had that Japanese the appeal to it. And they were like, but it could have been better if they hadn't fucked it up on the Japanese side.
And I mean, there are interviews that were officially published by that director, and he gives his justification. And I would just say, like, I don't know why you felt the need to do that on your own, though, sir. Maybe there's something I'm missing. And from what I understand, that did change with the DLC, which Ian also did not write all of the DLC scenarios instead. So that was also different. But I feel like post Frontiers and in Shadow Generations, that's where they've officially started like relying on the lore team.
This is where they let them cook.
Yes, precisely. And again, we have all our thoughts on Shadow Generations. I think that's another game that I think you are doing yourself a favor whether you enjoy both or not, but listening to it in English and Japanese, because they're just both really fucking good.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's where we are now.
And it's a good place to be, but nonetheless, Ian Flynn is a terrible writer and should be summarily dismissed because
he's the worst ever.
Because every new Sonic thing is the worst Sonic thing ever.
They burned our crops, poisoned our water supply, and brought a plague upon our children.
And he put references to old Sonic games in the dialogue, which is even worse.
Remember, the worst Sonic writer is always whoever is currently writing Sonic.
That's true. It's a curse they inherit. Like the moment they pick up the pen, it's like the spirit like crosses over into them, and they're like, "What has happened to me? I must write really shit stuff now that the fandom hates."
The best Sonic writer is the one who hasn't worked on the franchise in almost 20 years. Whoever that may be in your mind.
He was peak.
Ian Flynn really looking like me. I'm already half Sonic writer.
Ian Flynn looking a lot like Sand Flynn right now. What? Sorry, no, I don't know what I'm talking about.
They didn't even write that one.
I know, right? That's oh, by the way, shout out to Pontac and Graf, by the way, for surviving that.
I can't say I loved their stuff, but I'll never forget. I think it was it Pontac that came up to us at Youmacon, the Sonic Paradox little booth, and just hung out for a little bit. Like, he was just nice. Like, I don't know him from Adam, but he was nice to us, a group of goofy Sonic fans. And I told him, like, hey man, I really liked it. I'm glad Sonic has jokes again. So not to have a bummer. I'm just ashamed at the way the fandom treats people that work on the franchise in general. Like, it's not all bad. I do acknowledge, and hey, it is a miracle that like at the second I left Twitter, so much of that shit fell off because, they were all there. A bunch of bratty children and young adults just in a continuous hate machine cycle of what can we be mad about our favorite cartoon hedgehog.
At this point, stop reading the comics, stop playing the games. If you're just going to make yourself miserable, don't. I mean, learn from me. Although I suppose I hung around to where it got good again, but whatever.
And that's and we say this every time we say that. That is not dismissing criticisms you have for the franchise. And like anything, there is stuff to criticize. I just saw, Metal Virus, some people think maybe it's a little too dark for Sonic. Maybe it's a little too long. Like, we can have this discussion, but just if your opening statement is like, and that's why Ian Flynn should be drawn and quartered, and we should, I don't know, I should only write Sonic now because the fans know what it is, how to write Sonic. I'm like, no, I have nothing to say to you except get away from me. How dare you speak to me?
Either that or it should only ever be Japanese writers because Japanese writers are the only people who could understand Sonic the Hedgehog. And I'm like, look, I get it. I get they play your favorite ones, but come on.
Well, I think I've said this before, that I think that goes back to the, you were joking at the beginning of this. It's like, oh, well, Japanese writers, they know, they tell the very soft story of Sonic, who's a fairy. And I'm like, that's like straight up racist to me. Like,
Yeah.
like saying that only this ethnic group of writers, this country knows how to do this kind of story. I'm like, that, like I said, you don't know what you're saying. Like, that, what is the opposite of I don't know. You're being racist by the fact that only Glorious Nippon knows how to write stories about a whimsical character. That is so insulting.
It almost feels like sort of weird Orientalism, where you're like, oh, these magical people over there in the land of Japan with their samurai Bushido spirit that instill it within Sonic's universe every time they put pen to paper. I'm like, come on.
Like, I know Chris McFeely brought it up when we had him on the show, but I don't know how these people can even deal with the concept of a long-running series like, the traditional Cape characters or whatever have you, having multiple writers. Like,
yeah.
It's just a fact of life, and there are always going to be little incongruities between each portrayal. But if you're, ride or die, only one thing counts and fuck everybody else, that's not a healthy way to engage with media.
Or at least be honest about it. Like, I think you can, well, first of all, I think that goes with like, just step away from the franchise and say, hey, you know what? This was my favorite. Whatever. That, that would be like saying, and I mean, that this is kind of me. My favorite Batman of all time is, of course, Kevin Conroy in the animated series. That will always be my go-to for Batman. But I acknowledge Batman is not just that. Batman can kill people. Batman can use a gun, but my Batman doesn't. But I acknowledge that's not all Batman is.
Reminder that, in the earliest issues, Batman did use a gun.
Oh, yeah. And like jump on people's necks and kill them. And I think, again, there's the whole Sonic DC crossover going out, and a new Superman movie that actually seems fun and, at the risk of contradicting myself, true to core aspects of the character that I think have been ignored. I think that all goes into that, is you just have to have a level head about it. And the last thing I'll say is we get to the end of the outline here, which, thank you so much, Faulerro. Yeah. What a great outline.
Thanks. I was ridiculously thorough.
You certainly were.
I love Sonic. I'm over 35 years old. I have a Sonic tattoo. For the love of God and all things holy, read and watch and experience things that are not Sonic the Hedgehog.
That's so important. It really is.
Because it will allow you to appreciate the good things in Sonic more when you recognize like concepts in literature and whatnot, and it'll just make you happier on the whole.
Yeah, you can start experiencing things that you might like as well that aren't Sonic, because maybe you don't like him anymore.
Please just have a normal one.
I feel like what we need to do is we need to get Windy to translate the original Japanese manuals for Batman and Superman, so we can really get to the
No. Batman actually is very much like Sonic in that he has to repeatedly, make reference to the metaphor. That's why he keeps saying, I'm the knight.
And now we're all caught up with the modern day, at least at the recording of this podcast. So where we're at now is where Sonic can only move onwards and upwards, we hope.
And to the right.
We know it's... Yeah, mostly to the right. Hold right to win.
Not politically.
No, please don't. No, that won't.
Sorry. Not my Sonic.
In the case of UK, win and then hold right. Far right, apparently. Anyway, to wrap this up,
read a book.
There's still more outline. I'm sorry, everyone. Yeah, read a book. read one of the Martin Adams book and get really upset about how weird and different Sonic is in those. So how do we feel about the Western influence on Sonic, though? I mean, are these elements of the franchise, like, no longer relevant and actually at odds with what Sonic is now? Or do we think they enhance the overall Sonic experience? I think I know the answer to this, but let's just humor it.
I think it doesn't really matter whether people think they should or shouldn't be there, because now it happens. I will never give up adding more references to kind of the Western continuity of Sonic, because let's be real, any series that goes on this long is going to be a collection of influences from the different creators that have worked on it. And at this point, Sonic is indelibly linked to all of the work that has come from Western creators, from Japanese creators. It has kind of become a sort of hodgepodge of all of these different influences and past stories and past characterizations and everything else. And I don't think that trying to separate it out again or trying to isolate to either side of the pond is healthy for the franchise. I think that it needs to pull from all these different Sonic forms, because those are, like it or not, those are all Sonic, and they all deserve to be able to have at least a level of influence on what Sonic is today.
I completely concur. I think it's a what if game that you can play all day, every day, but the franchise, for good or ill, would not be what it is without all the history that came before it. And I alluded to it before, but I mean, one of my favorite things that I think one of his big talents in the franchise is when Ian Flynn, and I'm not going to say reference, but basically takes the idealized version of some concept that maybe didn't totally work and brings it back around to create a more interesting story. Like, that was his bread and butter in the Archie reboots. He's like, hey, let's do game adaptations, but adapt it for not only this continuity, but to where it's an interesting comic book. Like we've talked about, the Unleashed / Sonic Champions arc in Archie might be like the best arc of that entire book, because it managed to do that in interesting ways and made changes. It's all there. Like you said, it is all Sonic, and I'm glad he has a history that can be drawn on for this new chapter of keeping everything on the same page, united, but still staying true to these characters themselves. And I mean, I've said, like, the Shadow Generations was such a great example of that to me, and I'm very excited for what comes next.
Yeah, the thing about Western Sonic, certainly the early Western Sonic, is not, I won't say everything from it is relevant, even appropriate or good, because boy, it runs the gamut of weird things. They threw a lot of shit at the wall, and then some of it does come from the origin comes from Sega of America not trusting the Japanese side to be able to sell what was already looking to be a successful game. But, like, since so much of it became the backbone of the Western understanding of Sonic, it all brought something to the table. And every new, like, iteration of Sonic brings something to the table, whether it's Western or Japanese. No, you're right. It takes a lot to make a stew. But yeah, honestly, like, you might think there are too many cooks when it comes to Sonic, but I do honestly feel like everything brought something, even if it wasn't something good, and it was just like, well, this is a learning experience from us, let's never do that again. But I feel like, yeah, Sonic embracing everything that made up who he was leading up to this point just makes Sonic stronger than just being like, well, we're throwing that out because it wasn't in the original Japanese manuals. You can't do that. You gotta take the best of what makes Sonic, and that's what leads to stuff like the IDW comic being as strong as it is and the new games being as strong as they are, I think.
I think it's really cool that Sonic, over its history, has had so much influence, not just from the Japanese side, but also from the American side, the UK side, and, you know, like, as far as we know, maybe even sources from, you know, different parts of the world that we're just not aware of at this point in time. I think a really big help for Sonic is the fact that the West was able to do so much more stuff outside the games that was able to help kind of experiment with the formula and the character, you know, like the comics and cartoons and stuff, and like kind of figure out more, like, over the course of years, like, who is Sonic. And hey, if you want to hear about that, we have a podcast episode about that too. It really is us in the Sonic fandom. We can't help but, like, occasionally, go back and compare Sonic to Mario. And I think it's Sonic's strong suit that he has sort of this melting pot of more worldly influences, not just from, Japan, but from all across the world. Whereas, Mario might have some influences from American culture here and there, but like we kind of joked before, like the Disney-fied Nintendo has such a strong hold on their IP that, like, they have the final say, the first and the final say of all things Mario, which, is a good thing, but also I think, especially these days for the brand, is like sometimes kind of a detriment. And I just feel like Sonic is more rounded out and has more interesting things to say, literally.
I'm thinking we're never going to see any future reference to the live action movie because from the 1990s, because they regret that so much. I think that they'd rather not acknowledge it going forward. And but maybe they should. If Dave Ballmer was on here, he would argue that they should.
I mean, at this point, I would say do it for fun. Yeah. Have some fun with it. Which, I mean, man, that we might need to put that on the docket, the exploration of mascot characters and what the difference between Sonic and Mario is, as far as, like, Mario does have a personality. He does have a, established character, but just not on the same not on the same level as Sonic the Hedgehog. He is more Sonic was literally designed after Mickey Mouse, and Mario is more literally like Mickey Mouse, to where he anyway, that's a whole other thing. And I do, if there's one thing I can put out there that I hope changes somebody's mind, is for Sonic and for, man, just about anything you get mad about in media, there's usually not one particular person to blame. If there's a person whose writing you don't like, well, especially in Sonic, that was approved by multiple people. Same with voice actors, whatever. And unfortunately, the only time that's true where it's one person that you can blame for everything, it's usually the CEO of the company. And anyway, speaking of Mario, remember his brother Luigi? Heyo, time to end the episode.
All right, so another question I brought up on here, and I feel like we already got the answer to this, but do we think that Sega America went a bit too far initially when they were, like, deciding, like, to change Sonic to adapt to the West? Or were those steps, like, kind of necessary towards his success in the West? Because, to be fair, as we discussed before, made a little bit more money.
They wanted to at least create some level of consistency, even if that only really happened in the UK. But I don't know. I think that maybe things were a little bit too heavy-handed, but that was also pretty standard at the time for localization at the time in terms of video games in general. So while I do think that maybe some steps were a bit over the kind of a bit too much, it was also kind of indicative of the time that these games came out. And it would be a much larger conversation to really ascertain whether that was a good thing as a whole or not, because you're going to have to start looking at basically the entire video game industry at that point.
I basically echo that. And now, like I said, I don't know if I believe half the stories about Sega America and how those changes happened. But I mean, I think the results speak for themselves. But then I've seen the other argument where people say, like, well, the games stood on their own. Like, it was a good game. It was already a good product, quote unquote. Like, was it in addition to those changes and adaptions, or was it in spite of those? I think it's hard to know, but yeah, I think the answer is, like you said, Luke, is the video game industry as a whole. It wasn't just Sonic the Hedgehog.
It is interesting that, those changes did work out in a way, but I don't say, would Sonic still have been fine if they didn't do all those weird things? I don't know. I don't know if that it's weird how they say they wanted to soften out Sonic, but I think he actually looked a little softer in the original art, actually. It's weird. But I still say that some of them weirdly paid off, and like maybe they went way too far with the initial Bible concept. Like, what the hell were they doing in that? But at least they gave something of they tried adding a little something more to Sonic with that original framework of, like, the Kinterball versus Sonic stuff. So, I guess, like, when I think about it, I can't help but think about, like, the potentially unnecessary changes to Gyakuten Saiban and how it ended up as Ace Attorney, and how they wouldn't have made those changes now, but doing that did, I think, help propel Ace Attorney into becoming what it was. So that's, like, an example of, like, really severe localization in a weird way, but working out strangely.
I mean, that is essentially what good localization is making the game... keeping the original intent of the game or whatever media intact, while also making changes here and there to, like, make it most successful for the audience it's meant to be in, to make those, like, translation choices that make most sense for the region, stuff like that. Yeah. And I think that in Ace Attorney's case, changing a bunch of Japanese puns to a bunch of English puns, that just makes sense.
That's just that's like direct. So, but not a direct translation, a direct localization.
Exactly.
The other example. Oh, sorry, you were saying?
No, I was going to say, I think on other episodes I've mentioned the articles by the localization director of the Ace Attorney series, who's worked on it since the beginning, I think, of the games coming over here, are fantastic. She breaks down, like, they didn't just sit down and decide, oh, hamburgers. Like, no, they put thought into that, and especially how to, as the series, by the time you got to the great Ace Attorney games getting localized, like, they had to decide, okay, where do we go from here? And it's super fascinating, and you should go look those up again.
Yeah. Another example, just to throw that out there, is, this is a weird one, but Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger, which you might not have heard of, but in the West we know it as Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which was an interesting localization because Zyuranger did pretty good. It was a trailblazer in Japan, but it did not have the massive selling power that it had in the West. Like, that blew up over here, so much so they had to record new footage in Japan to give them more to work with. Like, it's weird to think, like, that was, like, at first they were like, oh, this isn't as good as Jetman, the much superior show that we just had over here. Localization can be good sometimes, even if it seems a bit extreme, and we've certainly saw a lot more of that in the 90s, though.
Yeah. Well, even going back, like, it's also not a, like, 80s, 90s phenomenon. I mean, look at, and again, a much more nuanced topic than you would think, but I mean, the difference between Mach Go-Go and Speed Racer, they're basically two different franchises made from the same source material. Yeah. And I just think that's fascinating. And it's just saying, like, this stuff has always been around. Like, you always have, I mean, there's also a great discussion of the person who wrote the subtitles for Parasite, the Korean movie, and how they had to make very intentional adaptations to have this movie appeal to mass market appeal. Like, the director, when he won the Oscar, I mean, I think he talked about after, like, you have to overcome the 1-inch barrier of subtitles on the bottom of that screen. And so you have to have every potential audience member in mind for that. Yeah, that applies to Sonic the Hedgehog too, I think.
Because I don't want to read subtitles. Nah, just kidding. I actually have them on all shows I watch now because I have hearing issues.
That and audio mixing has gotten worse. That is a fact.
Yeah. That's the truth. Something that Sonic fans are very familiar with.
I appreciate people wanting to be professional VTuber idols, but you need to stop that and go to audio engineering school. We need you.
Yes, please.
Right now.
Tired of watching a movie and, like, adjusting the volume on the fly.
So do we feel like people who are only stuck to Western Sonic history like me are maybe just a bit too stuck in the past? Or do you think it's understandable that, I don't know, like, people like me still like that old stuff and still think maybe it's still a bit relevant? I probably don't need to ask this question. You guys probably have.
Like I said, I think anybody who is too stuck to one form of Sonic really just need to go outside.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough.
And that's for Western or Japanese. Like, it takes two to tango.
Yep, I think it's perfectly fine if you have your favorite era of something. And I mean, every time we bring up STC, I get to be like, hey, I didn't grow up with this and I still think it's great, and get to follow the ups and downs and seeing things that I'm like, oh man, I wish this was in Archie, or this was in the cartoons, or they could have put this in the games, and et cetera, et cetera. I just think you have to have now. I think you have to have a hesitant. You got to give Sega the benefit of the doubt, Sonic Team, of what they're trying to do now, because I think it has the potential to be really good for the future of Sonic, and I'm sure they're going to continue to make mistakes in the midst of having good ideas, but I'm in a good place right now to where, like I said, I'm excited to see what they do next. And I mean, hell, I'm even excited for whatever story mode ends up in the Crossworlds racing game, just because I think, hey, man, it's going to be interesting regardless. I think it's going to be better than the last one we got.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Low bar.
It's funny to think that there was a time when Western fans like me might have felt like disconnected and alienated from Sonic, but now I don't feel that's the case nearly as much. I feel like we're getting back to Sonic, the Sonic that I knew, that I feel comfortable with, and instead it's all the fans who grew up with a different era of Sonic who now feel alienated and pushed away. So this is the true Sonic cycle, I think. So it's just going to keep happening. It's fine. But, for now, I feel like Sonic is in a Sonic 2 is in a really good place. He's in a good place where Sega cares about doing good, consistent, synergized stories that don't feel like they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, like maybe it did early on.
Or in the microwave.
Putting the baby in the microwave, no. Instead, there's more collaboration this time without all the petty squabbles or differences. And I feel like I'm really, really optimistic and positive about the future of Sonic, unless Sega decides tomorrow to stop all this and throw it away, which they sometimes do. So I guess we'll see. But the all-important final question that I put on the outline is, should Sonic eat hamburger?
I think occasionally it's fine. He ate lots of Burger. That was the only restaurant in town. I think it's
going
okay.
Back to the Bible, obviously, and the Martin Adams novels.
Yes. I think it's Sonic should maintain a varied and complete diet, as long as he always looks at the camera and says, but my favorite food is chili dogs, and always has been.
Sonic is an American, so he will eat hamburger.
Yes. When he's feeling the need to get in touch with his true nationality, which is American.
Yeah, I'm sorry, everyone, but this comes out in July. This is that's why we brought this up, to bring out our true agenda, is that Sonic is American. We've been saying it since the beginning, and if you disagree with that, you're wrong. I'm sorry. He's canonically American. He's not born on Christmas Island anymore. I'm sorry. He was born in Hardly, Nebraska. No, that's canon too. We've decided now.
I mean, I think McFeely started that whole Sonic is American thing, so
yeah.
Blame him.
Yeah, blame him.
Read between the lines of the U.S. Constitution. It will say Sonic is American.
That's when Nicolas Cage had to hold up the flame to expose.
It's literally red, white, and blue. Come on.
Which was a decision by Tom Kalinske, I'm pretty sure. He made this decision. He decided Sonic. He created Sonic. Sonic is his, and also Sega America, and also his mother, Madeline, showed. Anyway, we're getting off topic. Anyway, that's enough of that. That's enough of that shit. Plug our socials. That's what we're going to do. You can find us all across the internet at Sonic F Series. And you can find me at... wait, sorry, I keep forgetting that Luke is actually leading this one, because I led this one way too much. Sorry, Luke, take it away.
It happens sometimes, but thank you all for listening. As Faulerro said, you can follow us on Sonic F on various socials, and me personally, different places at CyberLink 420.
And you can find me on Blue Sky at jeremybaker.actor, and around the rest of the internet as GameBuddy, sometimes with a 123.
And you can find me all across the internet except the really bad places, and boy, they get worse every day, at Faulerro. That's Faulerro. Come follow me where I like this all the time. Sorry.
Love that jingle. You can find me across the internet as RockTheJake, and you can find me on Twitch as Mr. RockTheJake. And I promise one day I will stream again.
Yay.
Special thanks, as always, go out to Amy Waters for the use of our theme song from the album Gotta Go Slow. You can always check out more of her work on YouTube and Bandcamp. And, of course, make sure to subscribe, review, share the podcast around, all that good stuff that helps us grow. As for next time, we want to get into the summer spirit, so we're taking a little bit of a holiday down to sunny Australia for something a little different.
Oh no, you turned me into a live stream.
I was waiting for it.
So, we're going to... Have you heard of Sega World? No, not that one. The one in Australia. They had a fun little show called Sonic Live in Sydney, and if you've never seen it, well, no, very few people have, actually. I don't think there's very...
Yeah, it makes sense that you've never seen it because there's no surviving footage, but...
They have recorded it, or at least they've recorded a studio version of it.
Yeah, there is a studio album of the songs, songs
That's
from
right.
this show. And we're going to be listening to it just to really get into the spirit of, in the spirit of the multicultural approach to Sonic. We were looking at another incarnation of, I don't even know how to explain it. It's so fucking weird.
I know of this. I've never heard a second of it, so I'm looking forward to going into this completely blind.
All I will say is that Robotnik does get his own song, and I desperately wish there could have been a Long John Baldry recording of it.
Oh, man.
So what are you waiting for? Next episode of this podcast where we're going to bring you chaos.
Yes, give me chaos.
Don't miss it.
But until then, I've been CyberLink.
I'm GameBuddy.
I'm Faulerro.
And I'm RockTheJake, and did you know I'm totally lost right now?
If that's not the spirit of this podcast, I don't know what is. This has been The Hill is Always Greener, and we'll see you on the other side of the world in Australia. Oh!
I don't know if I can do another 14-hour flight.
Oh no, I'm on a 22-hour flight to Australia.
I hope I don't need to use the toilet. That would be really embarrassing.
Hope nobody takes their shoes off right next to me. I'd hate that.
Oh no, there's a baby crying. Just kidding, I'm the baby. I got transformed into it. Goo goo gaga.
Now I'm the plane.
Now I'm Australian.
Sleep, why are you riding me?
Oh, I think you know the answer to that, Dingo.
Oh, we're passing through some turbulence, Dingo. I better hold on tight. Oh, boy.